Chapter 2986. Ling Han accepted the medicine and nodded with a smile. Have a safe trip. I won't be sending you off. Feng Wuding's entire body was trembling. Which seventh-step cultivator would be forced to such a state? He was probably the only one. Although he wasn't a true seven-step cultivator, possessing the combat strength of a seven-step cultivator could barely be considered one. This was a great humiliation and a disgrace. Feng Wuding engraved this hatred in his heart. This would turn into endless motivation that would allow him to advance to the sixth step, or even the seventh step, and then defeat Ling Han. He would return all the humiliation that Ling Han had inflicted on him. He still wanted more. Stop fantasizing. Hurry up and scram. Ling Han waved his hand, interrupting Feng Wuding's fantasies. Fuck, it's none of your business if I want to think about it. Feng Wuding gritted his teeth and turned to leave. Facing Ling Han, all he could do was humiliate him endlessly. Ling Han turned around to face Xan Chihu. You actually didn't attack just now? He was somewhat surprised. If Xan Chihu and Feng Wuding had joined hands, then it would be hard to say who would win. Xan Chihu sneered. Isn't joining hands with him making me lower my status? Even though Ling Han hated this person to the core, he couldn't help but feel admiration when he heard this. Although Feng Wuding's talent was more outstanding than Xan Chihu's, he was far inferior in terms of pride and heroism. Then let's fight again, said Ling Han. The two of them hadn't decided a victor yet. As you wish. Xan Chihu charged over and took the initiative to attack. The two of them fought fiercely, but it was only lively on the surface. They both pulled away from each other, and neither was able to pose a true threat to the other. Thus, after fighting for 3 days, the two of them stopped at the same time. The next time we meet, I'll definitely take your dog life, said Ling Han. I'll cut off your head. Xan Chihu didn't show any weakness. The two of them parted ways and went their own ways. They continued to explore or veins in order to obtain more benefits and speed up their own growth. Ling Han was full of motivation. He wanted to crush Xan Chihu, Bai Fan Piu, Chong Yen, and the others. Such a goal made him yearn for power. It was just that this plane was a little too small, and it was even more dilapidated. Soon, Ling Han discovered that all the mineral veins had been dug out. Then go to the lower level. Ling Han went down. After going deep underground, he frowned slightly. At this point, the essence particles weren't simply burning. They were densely packed and had all materialized. The 6 types of essence particles were the origin of the world, and they possessed unimaginable power. When these essence particles were piled up, the resistance they formed was imaginable. Advancing forward was like an ordinary person sinking into a swamp. It was incomparably difficult. Zhou Heng had said before that even a true 7th-step cultivator would stop at the 33rd level because the intrinsic particles there formed a thick wall that couldn't be penetrated at all. Just by looking at this, one could tell that the density of the essence particles had already reduced his speed to such a slow state. It could be imagined that if the density was increased by 100 times, or even 10,000 times, he would really have to hit a wall before he could even take 7 steps. Ling Han's speed was extremely slow. Moreover, as the intrinsic particles scraped past, they brought with them supreme karmic fire. This destructive power was shocking. It made Ling Han feel as if he was constantly fighting against a quasi-7th-step cultivator. Moreover, it wasn't just one, but hundreds and thousands of them. They constantly attacked him, making it very difficult for him. After all, he didn't have the physique of a quasi-7th-step cultivator. He had to resolve every attack. Otherwise, he would be injured. And if he was injured in such an environment, it would only make his injuries worse and worse until he finally died. Opportunities were always accompanied by danger. This was not just a saying. Of course, this didn't apply to a quasi-7th-step cultivator. At this level, cultivators didn't need to worry about their own safety. They could go anywhere in the world and didn't need to care about anyone. After spending a whole 700 years, Ling Han finally walked out of this layer of the plane's mantle and entered into the next plane. He had just arrived here when he encountered a show of strength. A storm of energy rushed toward him. Fortunately, this was only at the quasi-6th step level, so he easily resolved it. Ling Han's eyes swept around, and he couldn't help but smile. Fortunately, although there were signs of excavation here, it wasn't empty, so there was still value in exploring. Ling Han began his search. At the same time, he took out the great medicine that Feng Wuding had handed over and started to eat. In a few days, he had completely digested these great medicines. He sighed. Although the power of the plane in his body had made his battle prowess heaven-defying, it was still ridiculously slow for him to improve by one step. Even after eating so many great medicines, his improvement was only a tiny bit. Search, search, search. He continued to search, and his gains were not small. After all, there were only so many quasi-seventh step cultivators in the world, and not all of them had come here. For example, before, Chong Yan and Piyu would come here to search for great medicines for Feng Wuding, but now that Feng Wuding also had battle prowess at the quasi-seventh step, would they still do the same? Obviously not. The 5 of them weren't babysitters. Similarly, Lin Yu Lien and Exin Chihu had advanced 6 steps and possessed battle prowess at the quasi-7th step. Lin Luo and Exin Fu definitely wouldn't come here again. After all, they couldn't do everything for them, right? Ling Han's cultivation level was slowly increasing, but compared to when he had immersed himself in cultivation, the efficiency was still a good few times higher. Of course, Ling Han didn't slow down his cultivation. He constantly lit up all the celestial venerable symbols in his body, absorbing the essence particles and strengthening the nearly endless power of the plane in his body. He now had more than 400 celestial venerable symbols. Although there were pitifully few high-level ones, he had 3 complete sets of combination symbols, which increased his cultivation speed by more than 3,500 times. Even so, his progress was still ridiculously slow. It could be seen how much power of the plane he had in his body. This was the price one had to pay for being powerful. How could one cultivate at an astonishing speed and be invincible among those of the same cultivation level? 30,000 years had passed, and Ling Han had more or less searched through this plane. He planned to head to the next plane, but just at this moment, a tyrannical aura suddenly crashed over. 7 steps. Ling Han immediately reacted. Only a quasi-7th step cultivator who had reached perfection in the power of essence could have such an incomparably tyrannical aura. Who was it? Was it Zhou Heng or Chu Hao? Ling Han could sense that although this aura was inexplicably tyrannical, it wasn't stable, so it should be a recent breakthrough to the quasi-7th step. Of course, this recent wasn't just a day or two. To reach a height like the quasi-7th step, a breakthrough within 10 billion years could be considered recent. Xiao, a figure appeared. The sun, moon, and stars were entwined around his body, and his domineering aura was astonishing. Ling Han's eyes narrowed. This was actually a golden silkworm. This fellow had actually reached the quasi-7th step. Ling Han had long known that among the previous quasi-7th steps, the ones most likely to advance to the quasi-7th step were Zhou Heng, Chu Hao, Thousand Shadows, and Golden Silkworm. However, in the end, it was proven that Zhou Heng and Chu Hao were even more monstrous. They had advanced to the quasi-7th step by relying on their own abilities. From the looks of it, Golden Silkworm must have snatched a fragment of the plane's core and used it to break through. Chapter 2988. Golden Silkworm went all out and used his strongest technique. Not only did his hands glow, but his whole body also lit up, and then he turned into a worm. Ling Han couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth, and he wanted to laugh out loud. Are you kidding me? This was not an ordinary worm, but a golden silkworm that was hundreds of feet long. Its whole body was wrapped in golden light, and endless chaotic aura surged, full of a sacred feeling. Golden Silkworm's original form. He was originally a silkworm, and after the last transformation he also returned to his original body, which was a cycle. However, after walking one round like this, his strength had skyrocketed countless times. Die! Golden Silkworm roared and opened his mouth. The golden light on his body surged in circles, and he attacked Ling Han. Buzz buzz buzz. The golden light attacked 10 feet above Ling Han, but it didn't fall immediately. Instead, it stopped, and then it wrapped around him in circles, turning into a golden light curtain. Ling Han suddenly found that he couldn't move. This golden light had an immobilizing effect. Ling Han's gaze swept over, but he only made an "oh" sound. So that's how it is. This was simply golden silkworm deliberately mystifying things. Because what made him unable to move was not the golden light above his head, but the golden silk threads that were almost invisible to the naked eye. They were so thin that he probably couldn't see them clearly even if he took 6 steps. Is this silk? Ling Han thought. After golden silkworm took 7 steps, he returned to his original form again, so of course this silkworm baby could spit silk. These silk threads were attached with 6 kinds of essence power, so they were extremely tough, which was why they could trap him. It was just that golden silkworm thought too highly of himself. Boy die! Golden silkworm's original body also came down from the sky. He spat out 6 kinds of essence power, condensed them into a heavenly saber, and slashed at Ling Han. Ling Han shook his head, and the 7 symbols were all activated again. He shook his arms, and all the binding silk broke in an instant. He raised his fist and punched golden silkworm. Golden silkworm's expression immediately became incomparably interesting. In his opinion, this should be his big counterattack. Ling Han was bound and could only be bombarded by his attacks. Even if his strength was inferior to Ling Han's, when it came to the strength of his physique, the two of them were on a completely different level. He could take 10,000 or even 100 million punches from Ling Han and still be fine, but if Ling Han were to take one of his attacks, he would be severely injured even if he didn't die. This was a 7th-step monster, completely unreasonable. But the current situation was completely different from what he had imagined. He should have been the one to unleash a thunderous strike, yet Ling Han easily dispelled his ultimate move. Then he counterattacked with a punch. From the looks of it, it seemed as if he was the one who had moved forward to take Ling Han's punch. Injustice or not? Bam! How fast was the attack speed of a celestial venerable? Before golden silkworm could finish his thought, the two had already confronted each other head-on. The heavenly blade condensed by golden silkworm could not withstand a single blow at all. It was shattered by Ling Han's punch, and Ling Han's fist was still blasting forward, smashing heavily on golden silkworm's face. Suddenly, a big worm that was hundreds of feet long flew out. Ling Han shrugged and shook his head, still unable to withstand a single blow. Golden silkworm was furious. Although he would not be affected in the slightest no matter how many times he was attacked by Ling Han, being rebuked by a 5th-step cultivator in such a disdainful tone still made him feel so humiliated that he almost wanted to commit suicide. But what could he say? His strength was indeed inferior, the difference was too great. I'll beat you until you submit. Ling Han continued to attack, bombarding golden silkworm. With such a show of power, golden silkworm had no room to fight back at all and could only be beaten. Although it didn't hurt at all, golden silkworm's heart was suffering and full of resentment. He even had an urge to kill Ling Han even if he had to fall 7 steps. Boy, this venerable one's physique is invincible, immortal, and indestructible. You are just massaging this venerable one's back. He still wanted to save face, so he was stubborn. Ling Han smiled. This is a grandfather beating his grandson, understand? Grandson, your sister. Golden silkworm wanted to vomit blood. He had cultivated for many eras, and it was Ling Han's grandfather's grandfather's grandfather. It was more than enough to be his grandson's 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 grandson, but he actually wanted to be his grandfather? The problem was that he really didn't have any strength to fight back now. Wasn't this the grandfather beating his grandson, and the father beating his son? Was he the most miserable 7th-step monster in the world? The more Ling Han fought, the more energetic he became, and his attacks didn't stop. He didn't think that he was wasting his strength in vain, nor did he feel a sense of accomplishment beating up a 7th-step monster. Because in addition to being immortal, a 7th-step monster could also be suppressed. Ling Han had such an ambition now. He wanted to suppress a 7th-step monster. Under the continuous attacks, golden silkworm's body was changing. It started to shrink from 1,000 feet long, and now it was 90 feet long. The change was actually very obvious. This was the suppression of strength. Even if it couldn't hurt golden silkworm, it could cause its body to change. Very quickly, golden silkworm became 800 feet, then 700 feet, 600 feet, and became smaller and smaller. When there was only about 3 feet left, Ling Han still didn't stop. Golden silkworm was finally afraid and it said, "Boy, what are you doing?" Ling Han smiled. "Remember, you have to call me master in the future." What did master mean? Golden silkworm was startled, and then he reacted. Ling Han wanted to be his master. Are you crazy? He was a 7th step supremacy, 7 steps. 7 steps immortal, even an existence like frenzy couldn't kill him, and he didn't fear any experts. Who could subdue a 7th step monster and make him his master? No, absolutely no one. Dream on. Golden silkworm said coldly. Ling Han just chuckled. Let's wait and see. 2 feet, 1 foot, 8 inches, 1 inch. Under Ling Han's continuous attacks, Golden silkworm's body was only an inch long. It was no different from a normal silkworm, but its body was golden and seemed very holy. Ling Han grabbed the golden silkworm, and a terrifying power wrapped around the golden silkworm's body like a spider, making it unable to expand its body at all. To golden silkworm's body, this wasn't the slightest bit of damage. Let alone an inch, even if it shrunk by 1,000,000,000 times, it would still be fine. But the problem was that a 7th step supremacy was actually being held like a pet. How embarrassing was that? No matter who saw it, it would lose all its face. Ling Han, I'm a 7th step supremacy, the main force against frenzy. You're imprisoning me, how can you face the world? He shouted. But his body was small, and his words were filled with childishness. It was as if he had really become a child. Pui, I can still kill frenzy. How did you treat me? Ling Han naturally didn't care. Be my pet. When you're willing to call me master, then I'll consider letting you go. Chapter 2989. Golden silkworm was even more unwilling to call Ling Han master. He swore that if Ling Han fell into his hands, he would use all means to make Ling Han regret it. If he didn't kill this kid, he wouldn't be a worm. Ling Han looked at him and revealed a teasing smile. You are thinking about how to deal with me if you can escape and are stronger than me, right? That's right. Golden silkworm didn't have any scruples. Although he was being suppressed, his physique was invincible. He didn't have to worry about getting injured or dying, so what was there to be afraid of? Ling Han chuckled and revealed a naughty smile. I'm not afraid of you. He muttered, Where is the toilet? I will suppress this little worm for 10,000 years. Heavenly venerable golden silkworm was instantly stunned. What? You actually want to suppress me in the toilet for 10,000 years? Of course, this wouldn't hurt me at all, but just thinking about it made me shiver. Not to mention a 7-step, even an ordinary person wouldn't be able to endure such humiliation. You dare! You dare! You dare! He shouted and really lost his composure. Ling Han scoffed. Why wouldn't I dare? It's just that there is no toilet here. Consider yourself lucky. After returning to the Xuanma Plain, I will let you have a good time. Golden silkworm kept cursing. Apart from cursing, he didn't have any other good ideas. However, how many heavenly venerables were good at cursing? They would usually attack if they were unhappy. Thus, Golden silkworm only said the same few words over and over again. Ling Han kept shaking his head. This was too lacking in lethality and imagination. A 7-step? You don't even know how to curse. So weak. Golden silkworm was speechless and stopped cursing. He treated himself and Ling Han as heir. Ling Han grabbed golden silkworm and continued to search for mineral veins. From time to time, he would have to add a wisp of power to restrain the golden silkworm. This was a 7th-step cultivator, and its body was indestructible and indestructible. He had to constantly suppress it with a power that far surpassed his own at all times. Otherwise, it would be able to easily escape, and could even turn around and launch a counterattack, dealing a heavy blow to Ling Han. Therefore, this was equivalent to carrying a bag of explosives with him. How could he be careless? For Ling Han, this was a very good experience, allowing him to maintain a combat state at all times. He believed that this would give him enough pressure, allowing his cultivation speed to be faster. After searching for a while, Ling Han soon had another harvest. He chewed the great medicine like it was a vegetable. Golden Silkworm naturally saw it, and he couldn't help but be a little surprised because Ling Han never returned empty-handed every time he made a move. Such accuracy was unbelievable. The Celestial venerates stone-isolated divine sense. Even 7 steps couldn't penetrate it. How did Ling Han manage to return without missing? When he fought with Ling Han, one wanted to escape, while the other wanted to suppress him. Even though the Golden Silkworm was trapped, in truth, he had the initiative. That was because Ling Han had to suppress him with power at all times, and as long as there was the slightest bit of carelessness, he would be able to break free. Just like that, 300 years quickly passed. It was about time. Ling Han planned to enter the next plane. He was slightly startled. There was a very powerful and overbearing aura crashing over. It was another new 7-step cultivator. In the blink of an eye, a person appeared in front of Ling Han. Heavenly venerate myriad shadows. This guy has also reached the 7th step. Previously, 10,000 shadows and Ling Han had set their sights on the same core fragment, and in the end, Ling Han had obtained it. 10,000 shadows did not dare to make a move at all, and had directly fled. Ling Han had initially thought that 10,000 shadows had missed this opportunity and would not be able to obtain another core fragment. Unexpectedly, he had also reached the 7th step. With his own strength, or did he obtain another core fragment through other means? Brother Golden Silkworm. Wanning was looking down on Ling Han with a disdainful expression, but when he saw the Golden Silkworm in Ling Han's hand, he was so shocked that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Damn, was he seeing things? A dignified 7-step cultivator was actually being held in the palm of someone's hand like a pet? Whoever saw this scene couldn't help but suspect that there was something wrong with their eyes. Golden Silkworm was so ashamed that he wanted to die. It was over his illustrious reputation. He had hoped to escape before encountering anyone. That way, as long as he didn't admit it, no one would know about his dark history. But now, everything was in vain. One could imagine how shocked Heavenly Venerable Myriad Shadows was right now. When he first saw Ling Han, he naturally looked down on him from above. The strongest of the 7 steps was invincible in this world, so he naturally didn't need to take Ling Han, who had once scared him into fleeing, seriously. But now he knew that he had been gravely wrong. So what if he was a 7-step undying? He could still be suppressed. You came at the right time. You can keep your old friend company. Ling Han smiled, his right hand reaching out to grab Heavenly Venerable Myriad Shadows. At this moment, Heavenly Venerable Myriad Shadows once again showed what was called decisiveness. He turned around, 6 kinds of essence power rising, turning into a sail. With just a wave, he disappeared without a trace. In crossing through the void, besides frenzy, no one could compare to Ling Han. But in terms of swiftly traversing through planes, he was no match for a 7-step undying. Ling Han didn't chase after him. In truth, if he had to suppress Golden Silkworm and deal with myriad shadows at the same time, then he would absolutely be powerless. In the end, Golden Silkworm would escape, and he would have to flee instead. Myriad shadows had fled in fear. There was nothing he could do about it. Before, he already had a strong psychological shadow against Ling Han, and now he saw Golden Silkworm, a 7-step undying, being captured by Ling Han, so he naturally lost his will to fight. He only wanted to flee. He didn't want to become the second 7-step undying to be captured by Ling Han. Golden Silkworm was also dumbfounded. Myriad shadows had actually fled just like that? Are you really a 7-step undying? But he knew that he still had to blame himself. Who asked him to be captured and become the first 7-step undying? Myriad Shadow's strength was about the same as his, so if he was captured by Ling Han, that meant that Myriad Shadows would definitely not be a match for Ling Han. This idiot, why didn't he think the other way around? There were 2 of them, and both of them were undying existences. Even if the 2 of them worked together, they still wouldn't be able to defeat Ling Han. Very disappointed, right? Ling Han asked with a smile. Golden Silkworm didn't reply. This brat could be proud of himself, but when Chong Yen and the others learned of this matter, they would definitely come looking for Ling Han. A subordinate of Frenzy had actually imprisoned a 7-step undying. This was definitely something that could not be tolerated. Very soon, many seven-step undying would appear to save him. Although to him, this would be a humiliation that he would never be able to wash away, it was still better than landing in the hands of Ling Han. Ling Han smiled. He could naturally guess what Golden Silkworm was thinking, but he couldn't be bothered to attack it. As his strength continued to grow, this fellow would only become more and more desperate. He entered the next plane, but this was another plane that he had visited previously through a spatial tunnel. Then he would continue to descend. Ling Han continued to explore the mines, and on the other hand he also concealed his tracks very well. He had already suppressed a seven-step undying, and now, no matter which seven-step undying he fought with, he would only be at a disadvantage. End of this chapter. Chapter 2990. More than 1,000,000 years later, Ling Han arrived at the 33rd level of the plane. 8 to 8 reading, -23. Oh, this was the last level that a heavenly venerable could reach. Any further down, the essential particles were extremely solid, turning into walls. Even 7 steps couldn't pass through. For so many years, Golden Silkworm had been fighting with Ling Han. Of course, it couldn't submit to Ling Han and become Ling Han's servant or follower. Not to mention 7 steps, even when it was 6 steps, it couldn't be a 7-step subordinate. This was the dignity of a heavenly venerable. It was just that after so many years, Ling Han had also obtained many great medicines, and his strength had improved greatly. This made it easier for him to suppress Golden Silkworm. Originally, he had to restrain Golden Silkworm every few breaths of time, but now he could extend it to the time it took for a stick of incense to burn. The longer this time passed, the more despair Golden Silkworm felt. Seeing that Ling Han's strength was getting stronger day by day, was he going to spend the rest of his endless life like this? Ling Han first walked around here, but this place had been excavated very cleanly. There were no mineral veins for him to explore. He gave up on the idea of continuing to search and planned to go deep underground to see how difficult it was to cross the wall formed by the essential particles. Moreover, the essential particles had materialized. Could he directly communicate with them and advance to 6 steps or 7 steps? Xiao, a figure streaked past, and an extremely beautiful person appeared. Lin Yulian. Miss Lin. Ling Han cupped his fists in greeting. He had always been grateful and respectful to the Lin family. Although Lin Yulian already had the battle prowess of 7 steps, she didn't have the slightest arrogance. She bowed slightly and returned the greeting to Ling Han. Brother Ling, however, when her gaze swept over the golden silkworm in Ling Han's hand, she couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression. So the rumors are true. Heavenly Venerable Golden Silkworm has really been suppressed by Brother Ling. Heavenly Venerable Golden Silkworm heard this clearly, and his face turned green. Wasn't this calling a monk bald in front of him? Ling Han smiled. I plan to raise a pet. In this regard, Lin Yulian could only be speechless. Ling Han was probably the only one who dared to do such a thing. It wasn't that Lin Luo didn't have the strength to do it, but the golden silkworm would one day reach the peak of the 7th step and stand shoulder to shoulder with Lin Luo. At that time, how could he suppress it? Of course, Lin Luo himself was not afraid. But besides him, could it be that everyone in the Lin family was at step 7 and not afraid? Since Ling Han dared to do this, it could only be said that this guy was really crazy. She didn't persuade anything, because the hatred had been formed. Even if Ling Han was willing to let Golden Silkworm go now, would Golden Silkworm act as if nothing had happened? The atmosphere was a little awkward. The two of them were speechless, unable to find a topic to talk about. Xiao, another figure flew over. It was Wu Haoyang. Ling Han nodded at him, which could be considered as a greeting. Wu Haoyang also nodded in acknowledgement, but when his gaze swept over Empyrean Golden Silkworm, he too turned pale with fright. This made Empyrean Golden Silkworm feel ashamed and resentful. Had he become an exhibit? Everyone who came over looked at him strangely. How could he face others in the future? Brother Ling is really a fierce person. Wu Haoyang shook his head, looking very impressed. Average. Ling Han appeared very humble, which made Lin Yulian and Wu Haoyang criticize him. If this was average, then what was called bold? Xiao, Another figure flew over. It was Xian Chihu. He nodded at Lin Yu Lian and Wu Haoyang, then his gaze swept past Ling Han and stopped on Empyrean Golden Silkworm. Golden Silkworm had an urge to die again. He thought to himself, you must not speak. The rumors are actually true. But things were completely out of his expectations. Xian Chihu still opened his mouth, sprinkling salt on Golden Silkworm's already tired wounds. After a while, Feng Wuding appeared. When he saw Ling Han, his first reaction was to turn around and leave. Previously, Ling Han had said that he would beat him up every time he saw him. Feng Wuding's strength hadn't broken through yet, so he naturally didn't want to have a conflict with Ling Han. Otherwise, he would definitely be asking for trouble. However, when his gaze swept over Golden Silkworm, he blurted out, Empyrean Golden Silkworm, you really fell into Ling Han's hands. Golden Silkworm. Feng Wuding hurriedly shut his mouth and shouted at Ling Han, hurry up and let Empyrean Golden Silkworm go. Who the hell do you think you are? Ling Han shook his head. It looks like the lesson I gave you wasn't deep enough. You actually dare to clamor in front of me. There was naturally a reason why Feng Wuding dared to do this. That was because Ling Han had to divert a large amount of his strength to suppress Golden Silkworm. As long as he attacked fiercely, Ling Han would have no time to suppress Golden Silkworm. Once Golden Silkworm escaped, the two of them could join forces. He didn't believe that they couldn't defeat Ling Han. He was always the one fleeing in front of Ling Han, so it was time for a change. Ling Han, you've gone too far. Feng Wuding roared as he took the initiative to attack. Ling Han snorted and punched out. Bang! In order to save Golden Silkworm, Feng Wuding chose to take this attack head-on. Under the violent surge of power, he was instantly turned into a rolling gourd. He was completely no match for Ling Han. He vomited blood again and again. This one attack had injured him quite severely. There was nothing he could do about it. He wasn't at the 7th step, so his physique wasn't invincible. Ling Han smiled slightly. One hand is enough to deal with you. A heavenly venerable using 1 or 2 hands didn't have much of an impact on their combat prowess. However, what Ling Han meant was that he could suppress Golden Silkworm with 1 hand and still have the other free to deal with Feng Wuding. This was more than enough. What kind of contempt was this? Feng Wuding's eyes were spitting fire, but he couldn't retort. If he was truly at the 7th step, he could indeed cause a lot of trouble for Ling Han. After all, his physique wasn't invincible and he could endlessly pester Ling Han. But now he vomited blood with a single attack. How was he supposed to play? Before Ling Han could relax his suppression of heavenly venerable Golden Silkworm, Feng Wuding had already been blasted into pieces. What should he do? He had already boasted. How was he supposed to clean up this mess? How audacious. You even dare to imprison a 7th step supremacy. Heavenly venerable Myriad Shadows sneered as he appeared, the aura of a 7th step supremacy surging. Feng Wuding was instantly overjoyed. He knew that heavenly venerable Myriad Shadows had once targeted Ling Han, but his tone now clearly indicated that he was standing on the opposite side of Ling Han. With Myriad Shadows' help, he didn't believe that he couldn't deal with Ling Han. It had to be known that Ling Han still had a 7th step supremacy. One person to deal with 3 7th step supremacies? Putting aside the fact that Ling Han had just reached the 7th step and wasn't much stronger than him, even veteran 7th step supremacies like Lin Luo wouldn't dare to pat their chests and say that they could definitely deal with him. Brother Myriad Shadows, let's join forces and take down this scoundrel, Feng Wuding said to heavenly venerable Myriad Shadows. All right. Myriad Shadows nodded. Chapter 2992. Zhou Heng glanced at Ling Han and smiled. Since we haven't started a war with insanity yet, there's no harm in joking around. What he meant was that the grudge between Ling Han and Golden Silkworm was just a joke. If it was a joke, why should others intervene? Feng Wuding wanted to refute but found that he couldn't find an excuse. Since he was 7 steps immortal, why should he be afraid that Ling Han would ruin Golden Silkworm? He glared hatefully at Ling Han, and then swept his gaze over Zhou Heng and Chu Hao. He remembered all 3 of them in his heart. When he took the 7th step, he would definitely let these 3 people know regret. He was the son of destiny. Disobeying his orders was equivalent to becoming an enemy of the Yuan world. Just wait and see. He snorted in his heart, turned around and left quickly. This was the limit he could reach. There was no point in staying any longer. Thousand shadows quickly followed. If Ling Han, Chu Hao, and Zhou Heng also decided to play a joke on him, wouldn't he be in trouble? Anyway, Golden Silkworm wouldn't die, so he would suffer for now. As long as Chong Yen and the others knew the news, they would definitely come to settle the score with Ling Han. He didn't need to be the vanguard. Lin Yu Lian, Xen Chihu, and Wu Haoyang also left, leaving only Chu Hao and Zhou Heng. We've benefited a lot, so we need to go back and cultivate in isolation for a while to consolidate our cultivation, Zhou Heng said. By then, I'm afraid insanity would have launched an attack and restarted the war. Let's go, Chu Hao nodded. Ling Han, don't overdo it, Zhou Heng reminded and left with Chu Hao. Ling Han looked at Golden Silkworm in his hand and couldn't help but smile. Since this guy couldn't be killed, he must play with it, or else what was the point? Ling Han, let me go. Golden Silkworm shouted. It was full of despair. So many people with 7 steps combat strength came, but they still couldn't help it escape. What are you shouting for? Ling Han increased his strength, stabilizing the power that bound Golden Silkworm. Even the sound couldn't be heard. He looked at the deep pit under his feet, but did not follow. Instead, he changed his location and drilled into the ground. He wanted to see with his own eyes the spectacular sight of the wall formed by the essence particles. There was no need to explain why he didn't follow the extinction. Was he courting death? Ling Han broke through the ground. Not long after, a wall appeared in front of him. It was hard to describe what kind of wall it was because at first glance, it was red, and then it turned green, and then it turned into 9 colors. It was constantly changing. Not only that, but their forms were also ever-changing. There was no fixed shape at all. This was the barrier formed by the essence particles, which sealed off the passage to the lower planes. Ling Han reached out and touched the barrier. Golden Silkworm saw this and couldn't help but sneer. He had been here before, and he had touched the wall formed by the essence particles. At that time, he was immediately sent flying. This power was too strong. It was as if all the power of the previous Yuan world was gathered here. Thus, this power was too strong. Perhaps only frenzy could resist it. Otherwise, even the peak of the 7th step would be helpless. If not, how could Lin Luo and the others stop here? When Ling Han came into contact with it, the intrinsic particle wall would produce an extremely frightening rebound effect, and Ling Han's physique was not indestructible and eternal. Thus, he would definitely receive a very heavy blow, and it would not be strange for him to suffer some injuries. And him? He wouldn't be affected in the slightest. Therefore, not only could he escape, but it was also possible for him to kill Ling Han. Kid, hurry up and touch it, go and touch it. Golden Silkworm cried out in its heart. This 7th step supreme martial artist was actually thinking of asking someone to go and touch a wall. Since ancient times, he was probably the only one who would do this. Ling Han reached out and was about to touch the essence particle wall, but he paused. He was wondering if this would be dangerous. The essence particles burned and formed endless hellfire. It had the power of a 6th step supreme, close to 7th step supreme. Even he had to use all his strength to resist it. Now that these essence particles had directly piled up into a wall, would it have an even more terrifying destructive power? If he touched it like this, would it cause any harm to him? One had to know that there was a 7th step supreme beside him. Once he was seriously injured, he wouldn't have any strength left to strengthen the binding force. If Golden Silkworm escaped, their situation would be reversed. He had to be careful. Release Golden Silkworm. Ling Han shook his head. He wasn't joking when he said that he wanted to keep Golden Silkworm as a pet. He was serious. He thought about it and added layers of binding force to Golden Silkworm. This could be effective for about 2 hours. Otherwise, the force would slowly dissipate and Golden Silkworm would be able to escape. Then he threw Golden Silkworm aside. He reached out again and pressed towards the essence particle wall. After a few tries, Golden Silkworm's heart was in a mess. One moment he was disappointed, and the next he was looking forward to it. When he saw that Ling Han's hand finally touched the essence particle wall, his heart almost jumped out of his throat. "Boy, you're finished." He really wanted to shout out loud. Though this layer of binding could trap him for about 2 hours' time, Ling Han had been injured by the backlash and would need at least a few months' time to recover. What he had was time. He was extremely excited and felt hot blood rushing to his head. Even when he broke through to the 7th step, he was probably just as excited. However, the next scene made him so surprised that he almost spit out his tongue. What did he see? Not only was Ling Han not sent flying by the essence particle wall, but even his palm didn't enter it. It was as if the essence particle wall was not strong enough to stop him from taking 7 steps, but a pool of water. Damn, how is this possible? Golden Silkworm's eyes widened, and his mind went blank. Not to mention him, even Ling Han was extremely puzzled. He didn't have much ambition to pass through this essence particle wall, because even Lin Luo and the others couldn't do it. His current strength was far inferior, so it was naturally even more impossible. Perhaps, when he took 6 or even 7 steps, he would be able to blast this essence particle wall. His goal was just to touch the essence particle and see if he could master the remaining 2 particles at the same time. Then, he would be able to take 7 steps in one go. Even if his strength wouldn't improve much, his physique could reach the level of invincibility, making up for his current biggest shortcoming. However, he never expected that when he touched it, not only did the essence particle wall not have any power to fight back, but it turned into a soft liquid, allowing him to easily press his palm into it. Is this a peaceful measure before resorting to force, waiting for his whole body to enter before launching a thunderous attack? Ling Han felt a little regretful that he hadn't asked Zhou Heng clearly what this particle wall was like. Reading on the mobile phone is more refreshing. Chapter 2993. Ling Han had always been very courageous. Moreover, his curiosity was even greater. Hence, when he discovered that this particle wall temporarily posed no threat, he pushed his arm forward and probed deeper into the particle wall. He wanted to communicate with the other 2 types of essential particles. But he was immediately disappointed. These essential particles had already turned into pure energy. Just like the plane's power, it was incomparably powerful, but he was unable to deduce its source. In other words, if he wanted to use this method to advance to the 7 steps, it was just a beautiful idea. Ling Han sighed, but he became even more curious. Could he really pass through this particle wall? If he really did, then what would happen after that? Would it still be a damaged plane? With such curiosity, his entire arm had already sunk into the particle wall. Then, after a slight hesitation, he took a step forward. Instantly, half of his body sunk into the particle wall, like a clay ox entering water. In just an instant, his entire body had entered the particle wall. Outside, Golden Silkworm was dumbfounded. It felt that its entire insect body was in trouble. So what if he was as strong as the 7 steps? It was completely dumbfounded. How could this be possible? Ling Han entered the particle wall. This place had turned into a swath of mud, and it was as if he had lost all his power. He walked with great difficulty in this swath of mud. He immediately discovered that the planes in his body were opening up one by one, greedily absorbing the energy formed by these essential particles. In just an instant, his power had clearly increased. What was going on? Ling Han was also dumbfounded. The blockade that was for the 7 steps was actually nourishment for him? He was very ambitious and immediately stopped thinking about it. No matter what, this was a good thing, a very good thing. Why was his cultivation speed so slow? There was no helping it. There were too many planes in his body. If he wanted to strengthen each plane to a high level, the time needed was shockingly long. But here, boundless energy surged in and was absorbed by his plane, transforming into the purest form of nourishment that increased his plane's power. Ling Han forgot everything and greedily absorbed it. At least a year later, he suddenly realized that there was still a golden silkworm. He wanted to stop and go out to take a look, but he immediately shook his head. It had been so long, and golden silkworm must have escaped. What was the point of going out to take a look? Moreover, once I stop, will the effect disappear when I go out and come back in? Ling Han did not dare to take such a risk. Forget it, as long as his strength soared, it wouldn't be difficult to take down the golden silkworm again. Ling Han sat cross-legged, absorbing boundless energy to strengthen the plane within his body. It had only been 1,000,000 years, but a plane had already reached a high level. Although they were all high-level planes, they could be further divided. For example, some high-level planes could only accommodate 5 steps, while others could accommodate 6 steps. Although they were all high-level planes, there were still differences between them. Limited by Ling Han's realm, he could only raise the plane to a lower level. However, reaching the 5th-step realm and 5th-step battle prowess were two completely different things. How many celestial venerables can a plane contain? For example, a low-level plane like the celestial territory had at least 4 heavenly venerables at the same time during its heyday. In other words, a celestial territory could match at least 4 first-step heavenly venerables. In the foreign territory, there were even more first-step heavenly venerables, at least a dozen. Therefore, the plane itself was far stronger than heavenly venerables of the same level. Every time Ling Han derived a lower-level plane, he would increase his battle prowess by at least 10 5th-step realm cultivators. Of course, one was nothing. The problem was, how many such planes were there in his body? Now, there were about 10,000, but there were even more that were just embryonic forms and had not begun to evolve. Another 1,000,000 years passed, and Ling Han cultivated the second plane to the extreme. Time flew, and after 10 billion years, all the planes in Ling Han's body had reached the lower level. Ling Han didn't stop. Instead, he continued to evolve the embryonic form of the power of existential plane. This was possibly a one-of-a-kind opportunity. If he missed this opportunity, he would need to evolve the power of existential plane in his body and push it to the next higher level. The time he would need to do that would definitely be measured in eras. Moreover, it would be hundreds or thousands of eras. A new plane was quietly born. It was nurtured in one of Ling Han's cells, and with the infusion of endless energy, this plane started from a tiny bit, and after a period of over 1,000,000 years, it reached the level of a low-level plane. This kind of evolution speed could be called a miracle. In the origin world, even with the fastest devouring speed, it would be impossible for a lower-level plane to evolve to a higher level in 1,000,000 years. Ling Han had created a miracle, although he did not know how this miracle was created. Because of frenzy, Ling Han also did not know that his devouring ability, which he had obtained because of frenzy, was being used here. Was the extinction earlier also because of this? If so, why didn't frenzy send people here? Couldn't they easily cultivate a large number of experts? Oh, that's not right. Frenzy could only reach the 6th step, and the 6th step could not reach the 33rd level. Even if they could absorb this energy, what was the use? Forget it, he would not think about it. The improvement of his strength was the real thing. One plane after another bloomed and formed in Ling Han's body. His realm did not change at all, but his strength was advancing by leaps and bounds. After another 510 billion years, Ling Han finally stopped. The hundreds of thousands of plane power in his body had all turned into lower-level planes. If he exerted his full power, it would be equivalent to millions of 5th-step cultivators sending combat power to him at the same time. How powerful was this? If I fight Golden Silkworm again now, I can suppress him in one move. As long as I add a bit of power, I guarantee that he will not be able to break free for a month. Ling Han said proudly. His current combat power should not lose to the peak of 7th step. It's a pity that there are only so many planes in the Yuan world. Now that I have reached the limit in terms of quantity, the next step is to push these planes to higher levels. Ling Han thought of the question he had asked Zhou Heng before. For those who broke through to Celestial Lord with a plane in their body, they were the strongest at the 6th step. This was because the plane in their body could also reach a higher level. It was equivalent to 10 6th step cultivators helping them. Naturally, they could sweep away the other 6th step cultivators. Zhou Heng, Chu Hao, Lin Yolyan, and the others were all such existences. Moreover, because there was a 7th step cultivator above them, they even had 2 planes in their body that could be pushed to higher levels. With the help of 10 6th step cultivators, they would naturally be stronger. However, a higher level plane was the limit. It was impossible to reach a higher level. Therefore, after advancing to the 7th step, although there was still a difference in strength between the 7th step, it was not too big. Moreover, the physique of a 7th step cultivator was not bad. Even if there was a difference in strength, it would not cause much of an impact. Chapter 2994. There were hundreds of thousands of planes in Ling Han's body, and all of them could reach a high level. By then, if he used his full strength, it would be the same as hundreds of thousands of 6-step cultivators helping him. This was unbelievably powerful. Counting to 7 steps, who could compare to him in terms of power? In fact, no matter which one it was, they would be left in the dust. But this way, he would have used up all his potential at 6 steps. If he advanced to 7 steps, his power would only increase because he had mastered one more type of intrinsic particle. In addition, his physique would be invincible. It wouldn't be like now, where every increase in power would be earth-shattering. Unless he could increase the quality of the planes in his body by another level. Supergrade. He didn't need all of them to be supergrade. As long as he had 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 like in the origin world, that would be enough. In that case, he would be able to use the power of dozens or even hundreds of 7-step cultivators. Beating anyone would be like beating his own son. History from ancient times to the present told Ling Han that it was impossible to cultivate a super high-grade plane inside his body. However, Ling Han had already created a miracle, and there were hundreds of thousands of planes inside his body. Could it be that he couldn't create history again? Unfortunately, my number of planes has reached the limit. Also, I'm limited by my realm. I can't increase the quality of the planes. This is all I can do. I hope that when I advance to 6 steps, I can still use the energy here. Ling Han sighed, feeling that it was a pity. He ended his cultivation and continued forward. Since he was already here, he naturally wanted to see what was hidden behind the 33rd level. As he walked, he made deductions in his mind. Previously, he had the idea of strengthening his defense. The first was the simplest, which was to increase his realm. With one more type of intrinsic particle to temper, his physique would have a qualitative improvement. The second was to use the power of the plane to form a defensive shield. Of course, the first method was definitely better. It would solve the problem from the source. There was no need to do anything, and the defense would be permanent. But the problem was that Ling Han was only at 5 steps, and the day he reached 7 steps was very far away. This was a waste of time. So, he could only use the second method. In the past, he couldn't because the power of the plane was too weak. He couldn't match the power of a 7-step cultivator. But now he could. The combined might of hundreds of thousands of 5th-step cultivators should be able to rival a peak 7-step cultivator, right? As he walked, he thought about how he could make use of the power of the plane and transform it into his ultimate defense. 10 days later, he walked out of the particle wall, and his mind was suddenly enlightened. 4 earthen yellow light spheres appeared around him, and each light sphere was connected by a golden ray of light, forming a triangular cone that protected Ling Han within. With this kind of defense, I believe that even 7th step would need several hundred attacks to break it. Ling Han revealed a confident smile. After being attacked several hundred times, did he not have any reaction at all? As long as he infused more power into it, its defense would reach its peak. This could be considered a different kind of invincible body. Ling Han looked around. What is this place? It wasn't a dilapidated plane like he had imagined. Instead, it was like the depths of the universe. It was pitch black, cold, and empty. And in a place infinitely far away, there was a dot of light that emitted a gentle yet supreme aura. Even though it was infinitely far away, Ling Han could still easily sense it. This light was gentle and gave him a sense of familiarity. Ling Han couldn't help but be shocked. Why did this light give him a sense of familiarity? One had to know that he was a 7th-step cultivator, and there was nothing in the world that could shake his emotions. You've come. An ancient voice sounded in Ling Han's mind. It was grand and majestic, but there was no life or emotion in the world. What was going on? Who was talking to him? After persevering for so long, you finally arrived. The voice sounded again. Who are you? Ling Han asked in a low voice. I'm a seed buried in your life imprint. Only when I return here will I be activated, the voice said. In his own body? Ling Han felt a chill run down his spine. Fuck, what did he think he was? Why did he have to stuff everything into his body? First, it was the frenzy that branded a life imprint on his body in his previous life, accompanying him in his rebirth. But this time, what the hell was it? My body, my consciousness, and my life imprint aren't in that you can enter whenever you want. You still haven't answered my question, Ling Han said. Who are you? What's your identity? Where did you come from? The ancient voice sighed softly. I'm no one. I'm just the will of a world that won't disperse. Fuck, why did he have to be so mysterious? Ling Han was just about to speak when, countless images surged in his mind. He saw an intense battle, saw blood flowing like a river, saw Chong Yen, Piyu, and the other seven-step cultivators as well as Huang Sha, who had long since died, fighting fiercely with a woman in black. Absolute fire, also known as extinction. This extinction was still indescribably beautiful, but it was also incomparably cold. Even though it was 1 against 6, it still had the upper hand. And on the other side, there were 2 armies fighting fiercely. They were both celestial venerables, and there were countless casualties. This was a dimensional war, and it was exactly the same as the current frenzy. It was just that the current frenzy was much uglier, and its opponents had changed to Lin Luo, Xen Fu, and the other new 7-step cultivators. Ling Han was even more shocked. What the hell was this? He actually saw the dimensional war of the previous Yuan world. What did this have to do with him? Next, he saw a scene that he already knew. Huang Sha sacrificed himself, entangling extinction tightly, while Chong Yen and the others detonated the Yuan world, releasing an attack that far surpassed the 7-step cultivators. In the end, extinction was shaken into pieces. Because celestial venerable Huang Sha was not at the center of the attack, his physical body was not destroyed, but his spirit was annihilated. The origin world collapsed, and all the planes shattered at the same time. Countless lives died in an instant, and this formed an incredibly powerful force that broke through the plane's barrier. All the pieces of the plane were pushed into the void, stacking on top of each other. This was a mighty force that even a 7-step supreme being could not compare to. The power of life was also buried. Because it had been condensed to the extreme, under the accumulation of time, it turned into a great medicine that was beneficial to even celestial venerables. There were also some fragments left in the core of the dimension, which turned into celestial venerable symbols. So this was how the great medicine and celestial venerable symbols here came about. Ling Han also saw that Chong Yen and the other 7-step cultivators were also affected by this great destruction and great collapse. Their spirits were heavily injured, and they were beaten into a state of deep sleep. They needed a long time to recover. When they were buried in the depths of the group of dimensions, tens of thousands of light spots formed and entered their bodies. This should be the life imprint of those geniuses of the previous Yuan world. It was precisely because of the existence of the life imprint that they could take human form after absorbing energy. Wait a minute. Ling Han was stunned. Didn't Chong Yen and the others say that they were the ones who preserved these life imprints, winning a glimmer of hope for the future? But looking at the scene now, weren't the 5 of them already in a state of deep sleep? How could they have done it? Chapter 2996. What exactly are you trying to say? Ling Han asked. Boom. There was no response. A mysterious power surged into his body, carrying out an indescribable, unexplainable, and mysterious transformation. This power was not very strong, but in terms of quality, it surpassed Ling Han's defense and easily surged into his body. How was this possible? Although Ling Han hadn't obtained all 6 essential powers yet, and hadn't cultivated an invincible physique, the condensation of the power of several 100,000 existential planes was definitely enough to block the power of 7 steps. So, why was it that he couldn't even withstand a single blow? No. This was not vulnerable, but he could not resist at all. No matter how strong you were, how could you resist spiritual attacks? This was a little similar. In any case, Ling Han could not resist it at all. Fuck, what the hell was this? Ling Han immediately wanted to retreat from the ball of light, but he found that the ball was extremely sticky and firmly held onto him. Boundless power was surging and squeezing him, making him unable to move. It should be known that the particle wall outside was so thick that even level 7 could not do anything. Now, Ling Han only had power at the peak of level 7, and the particles in the ball of light were even denser, making it even more difficult for him to move. Was he going to be trapped here? If the light only trapped him, that would be a small matter. More importantly, this ball of light had sent a beam of light into his body, which was full of unknowns. Because Frenzy had also sent a beam of light into his body, intending to turn him into a clone. Now that this ball of light had also sent a beam of light, could it be for the same purpose? He did not want to become anyone's clone. He was himself an independent individual. Ling Han roared, and the power in his body boiled. The Seven Streams Talisman was fully activated, and the power of hundreds of thousands of planes was also activated, allowing him to explode with power at the peak of level 7. However, the particles solidified and bound him firmly, and he could not break free no matter what. Boom, a voice once again rang out in his mind, vast and indescribable. I am the will of this world, this voice said. I know you've said it before. Ling Han stopped struggling. He would not be able to break free from this kind of imprisonment with his own strength alone. Don't be afraid, I have no intention of harming you, nor can I harm you, the voice continued. Ling Han chuckled. He didn't believe it. To be able to bind him, what kind of mighty force was this? Furthermore, his physique had not reached the level of indestructibility, so how could he let down his guard? What kind of existence are you? The voice paused for a moment before continuing. I am not a concrete existence, but the so-called Yuan world of the previous generation in your consciousness. Countless lives were destroyed, souls intertwined and turned into a will that transcends everything. Ling Han was surprised. You mean, you can represent the previous Yuan world? In a sense, yes. The voice said, however, the previous Yuan world has already collapsed, destroying all life. My power is close to nothing. Then why is this ball of light still able to bind me? Ling Han asked. To be able to bind him, this wasn't an ordinary power. It was the peak of the 7th step, the strongest in the world. No, this isn't something decided by my will. Instead, it was caused by the collapse of my own power after the Yuan world collapsed, the voice said. Ling Han shrugged. Then how do I get out of here? Don't be nervous. The reason this place exists is because a strand of my will hasn't dissipated. However, since I've seen you, there is no need for me to exist anymore, the voice said. Ling Han was skeptical. Then what do you want to tell me? The power that surged into your body just now changed you a little, allowing you to truly have the ability to transform your body into a Yuan world, the voice said. Ling Han faltered. Though there were countless dimensions in his body that could rival the current origin world, and it was even possible that there were a few more in number. That was because 10 dimensions had been swallowed, and no new dimensions had been born, so it was natural that there were more dimensions in his body. However, compared to the Yuan world, he was still lacking. Firstly, his planes couldn't reach the highest grade. This had been the case since ancient times. Secondly, the total number of his planes couldn't increase. On the contrary, if a plane was completely destroyed without leaving a mark, then he would lose that plane forever and couldn't create it again. But of course, the real Yuan world wasn't like this. It was endless and could even give birth to super high-grade planes. But according to the voice and the will of the previous Yuan world, he could make up for these two shortcomings. Yes, although your power hasn't increased at all, it has given you endless possibilities. The voice said. However, I'm only left with a strand of my will. What I can give you is just a sliver of possibility. A sliver of possibility was enough. As for the rest, Ling Han believed that he could solve it himself. Ling Han wasn't too surprised. Instead, he said in a low voice, Why me? Why me? In his previous life, there shouldn't have been anything special about him. Why did two super big shots choose him? There aren't so many whys. If I chose someone else, that person would also ask why him? The voice said, if there really is a reason, then it's that I've seen a corner of the future through the river of time. And you are the one who could change history. Is it just a possibility? Ling Han asked. The future isn't certain. And when it involves a powerful existence like madness, it's even more unrealistic. The voice said, you don't have to belittle yourself. The help I gave you only gave you the possibility to become infinitely powerful. Everything else still depends on your own efforts. Ling Han was speechless. In fact, this possibility was the biggest cheating. He believed that if he gave this opportunity to Xen Chihu, Lin Yolian, and the others, their achievements wouldn't be any weaker than his. Then what about Feng Wuding? He should be the chosen child of destiny. The voice said, at that time, when the world collapsed, I had only just formed. I barely used a bit of my power to send the seeds of the world into the bodies of the 5 immortals and stored them. I couldn't control them perfectly, so a bit of the worlds will imprinted on one of the seeds. Feng Wuding isn't actually the child of destiny. It's just a mistake. Ling Han's expression was strange. Fuck, to think that Lin Luo and Zhou Heng had been full of expectations for this guy, causing him to show mercy time and again, allowing this guy to thrive until now. So it turned out that he could have killed him with a single slap long ago. What child of destiny? If there really was a child of destiny, then it was him. Although Ling Han wasn't interested in this. However, Feng Wuding did indeed gain many benefits from this. For example, he had 100 planes. This far surpassed Xen Chihu, Lin Yolian, and the other geniuses of the past. Chapter 2997. Ling Han was not envious of Feng Wuding's possession of 100 planes, because he possessed as many as several 100,000. In comparison, that was only a small matter, and could not even compare to a fraction of what he possessed. What annoyed him was that Feng Wuding was born with 10 first-class talismans. Logically speaking, that should be his, right? Also, I have one more thing to tell you. The will of the previous generation Yuan world said. This could be called the world's will. It didn't belong to any existence, but was condensed from the souls of all living beings in the previous generation Yuan world. In the last war, extinction was hit by the destructive power of the world. Its body was destroyed, and only a trace of its divine soul was left. However, after suffering this loss, the current frenzy has become even more terrifying. Compared to my generation, extinction only devoured 3 planes. The current madness far exceeds this number. According to my calculations, even if the Yuan world is destroyed again, it won't be able to kill madness. Instead, it will obtain the world core. The worlds will suddenly stop. After a pause, it said, in short, madness will become stronger. You won't be able to kill it alone. Ling Han's heart jumped. What the hell was this world core? Why is this voice hemming and hawing on this? It was going to die soon anyway. What was there to hide? Ling Han didn't ask. If it wanted to tell him, it wouldn't suddenly stop. He just said, do you want me to join forces with Feng Wuding? You do want to join forces with someone, but it's not Feng Wuding. The worlds will said. Ling Han asked. Extinction. Ling Han directly spat it out. Extinction? Are you stupid? The previous Yuan world's collapse was caused by extinction, and extinction was the predecessor of madness. You want extinction to kill madness? Hee, it would be strange if extinction agreed. Don't be surprised. The worlds will said, when I discovered that extinction still had a trace of consciousness, I knew that it would rise again one day. So, I hid extinction's corpse and used the last of my power to repair her. I even gave birth to a new consciousness. The 7 steps are the 6 types of essence powers and the unique power of a plane. This unique power can be condensed into 1, or it can be condensed into 100, or even 1,000. It can even contain a real plane and possess even greater power. This can be called the 7th type of essence powers. That's how madness is. Every time it devours a plane, the 7th power becomes stronger, far surpassing any essence power. So, it's invincible. Even 7 steps can't resist it. To suppress it, You have to surpass the 7th power. But you started late, and you can't directly devour planes. You can't surpass madness. Ling Han thought for a moment, and nodded slowly. If he relied on himself to strengthen those planes in his body, how long would that take? Perhaps one day, he could really transform one of the planes in his body into a super high-grade plane, but at that time, perhaps madness would have already devoured all the planes and unified the origin world. Even though the essence particles here formed a wall, abundant in energy, this was still only a portion of the past origin world, a remnant. Taking a step back, even if he gave Ling Han all of it, he would at most become the previous generation's origin world. But one must know that even if the Yuan world of the previous generation was destroyed, it would only be severely injured and unable to kill it. But the current frenzy was even stronger. That was why the world will said that he couldn't kill frenzy on his own. Ling Han's expression did not change, but his heart was like a tide. This world's will was very calculative. It had actually hidden Extinction's body long ago and used its remaining power to repair her, giving her a new consciousness and becoming the key to defeating madness, which was the other her. And he had also become a chess piece. Madness chose him, and so did the will of the world. He did not agree with what the world said. It was really just a coincidence. How could there be such a coincidence? However, it was obvious that the other party wouldn't say it out loud. This guy was hiding a lot of secrets, such as the core of the world. Also, did Extinction give birth to a new will, or did the will of this world infuse its own consciousness and replace it? Maybe it could, maybe it couldn't. If Ling Han were to believe in such a strange person, it would really be laughable. Here, Ling Han solved some mysteries, but also gained even more puzzles. He even felt like he was trapped in some big conspiracy. So, if you want to destroy frenzy, you must obtain the 8th type of power. The world's will continued. The 8th type of power, the 7th type, was still fine. After all, it already existed long ago. It was just a different way of saying it. But what was the 8th type? There was such a power? Then why had no one ever mastered it and reached the unprecedented 8 steps? Actually, you've already seen this power, the world's will said. Yin and yang, life and death, creation and destruction, positive and negative, these are all manifestations of the 8th type of intrinsic power. However, no one can grasp it alone. 2 people must join forces to do so. So, it wanted him to join forces with Extinction. Ling Han thought about it and said, "Are you sure that Extinction will join forces with me to fight frenzy?" "I'm sure." The world's will was very sure. "Alright, I don't have much time. I need to focus on improving your body so that you truly have the ability to transform your body into a Yuan world." Boom! A mysterious power entered Ling Han's body. This should be on the spiritual level. After all, the words "world's will" explained everything. But soon, this power dissipated, and the ball of light quickly extinguished. Rumble! Amidst the violent tremors, this space was collapsing. After a while, Ling Han saw a void storm blowing over. He understood. With the dissipation of the world's will, this Yuan world of the previous generation had also completely lost its support. The plane barrier was no longer effective, and naturally, it was penetrated by the void energy. This place would soon cease to exist and return to the void. Because this was originally the territory of the void, such a plane group should not exist at all. Hong Long Long, the void storm wreaked havoc, yet Ling Han remained unmoved. He put up a defense. His physique was almost indestructible, and he would not care about this kind of impact at all. He looked inside his body. Although the world's will spoke openly and without any selfish motives, Ling Han could not completely believe it, let alone trust it. Did the other party leave any tricks in his body? Did it suddenly take control of his body and replace him? Chapter 2998. He examined carefully again and again, meticulously down to every cell, but Ling Han finally came to the conclusion that he really didn't find anything wrong. His cultivation level and power didn't change in the slightest, but there was a feeling that there was something extra in his body. This was a change because in one of Ling Han's cells, there was a power of the plane forming. Though it was only a sliver now and couldn't even compare to the power of the gushing spring tear, as long as it continued like this, there would be a day that it would evolve into a new plane. In other words, Ling Han had already broken through the previous barrier and obtained the ability to create a new plane. Then, there was only one ability left that hadn't proved that he could push one or even a few planes to a super high level. But it was hard to prove it now. After all, he was limited by his cultivation level. He had to reach the 7th step before he could confirm whether he had such an ability. In truth, as long as the plane in his body could grow endlessly, then his strength would never have a limit, and he could continue to grow. He tore open the void and returned to the origin world. He spent a whole 500 billion years on this journey, and he was sure that the world had already changed, and things remained the same, but the people had changed. He returned to the Xuanma plain, and soon found the Empress and the others. Everyone was living in seclusion because they hadn't dealt with the trouble of Chong Yen, Piyu, and the others. Seeing Ling Han suddenly appear, everyone was incredibly surprised. This trip had really been too many years, and there had long been rumors that Ling Han had already died in the last era's origin world. Though the Empress and the others didn't believe it, too much time had passed, and they couldn't help but worry. Ling Han gave a rough account of his experience, but he cut out the part where he encountered the will of the world at the end, because he didn't want everyone to worry for him needlessly. Everyone was happy. Ling Han's strength had improved further, and he could truly match any 7th-step elite. This was an extremely good thing. The foreign battlefield has already reopened, the heavenly venerable origin-born said. As early as 400 billion years ago, madness had made a comeback and launched a fierce attack on the Xuanma plain. After devouring the fiery frost plain, Frenzy's strength had indeed improved greatly. Although its main body was still being held back by many 7 steps, even with the addition of Zhou Heng and the other 3 7 steps, the situation was still not as good as it was in the fiery frost plain. Chaos could spare more energy to create even more armies. This time, the extraterritorial battlefield was divided into 2 levels. One was for the 7th-step cultivators, and the other was for the 6th-step and 5th-step cultivators. This was probably a modification made by Frenzy. The fewer the number of monsters on the battlefield, the greater its advantage. As long as all the monsters were at level 6, it would be fine. It had the advantage in numbers. Luckily, Xen Chihu, Lin Yu Lian, and the other supreme geniuses had reached stage 7 battle prowess. Even if they didn't have an indestructible body, their battle prowess was too strong. They were barely able to hold the line of defense, but they were slowly retreating. It wasn't like before, when they retreated 1,000 miles. Ling Han found it strange. Just how many 6-step monsters did Frenzy create that even 4 7-step experts were unable to reverse the situation? I have to go to the extraterritorial battlefield to take a look, Ling Han said. Frenzy's advancement had to be stopped, because it was impossible for a super high-grade plane to be born in the Yuan world now. So, as long as the Xuanma plane fell, Frenzy would completely occupy the Yuan world like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. Even the 7th-step cultivators wouldn't be able to stop it at all. No matter how deep the enmity between Ling Han and Chong Yen and the others was, in the face of the Yuan world's survival, this was all a small matter. Of course, this parting would be more than 500 billion years. No matter what, Ling Han couldn't leave immediately. He stayed at home for 3 years before going on his way. The extraterritorial battlefield had already been fighting for so many years. Waiting for another 3 years wouldn't make a difference, right? In these 3 years, he spent most of his time accompanying his wife and children. Other than that, he gave pointers to the others in their cultivation. As Ling Duanyun ran around, the descendants of the Ling family, who were scattered all over the place, slowly gathered and formed a large clan once again. However, they were very low-key. After all, Ling Han hadn't returned, and they had offended quite a few 7-step supreme martial artists. Ling Han used his divine sense to sweep over every descendant. Unfortunately, Ling Duanyun was already the most outstanding. However, Ling Duanyun ultimately stopped at the 9th heaven. He was still far away from becoming a celestial venerable. It would be difficult for another celestial venerable to emerge from his descendants. Ling Han also knew that he was asking for too much. Just look at how many celestial venerables had emerged from his children and grandchildren. In the end, Ling Han brought Ling Fifan to the extraterritorial battlefield. There couldn't be too many people, because Ling Han had no problem protecting himself now. However, if the 7-step cultivators started fighting, he wouldn't be able to protect too many people. This was also suitable for Poyu and the others. If they were to fight with Ling Han, they definitely wouldn't have the spare energy to take care of the people around them. The problem was, these 5 people came from the Yuan world of the previous generation. Apart from Feng Wuding, who they cared about, was there anyone else that they needed to take care of? Therefore, this wasn't fair. They could be very straightforward and fight as they pleased. They didn't have any misgivings about holding back for fear of harming innocent bystanders. Ling Fifan was currently at the 2nd step, and he was at the bottleneck of breaking through to the 3rd step. Bringing him to the extraterritorial battlefield to experience a fierce battle of life and death would be of great help to him in his breakthrough. Thinking of what Chong Yen and the others had said in the past, a question surfaced in Ling Han's heart. That was why they had lied about those life imprints, saying that they had collected them in advance, and that the worlds hadn't added them to them. Claiming merit? It was impossible. Did the 7-step cultivators need such a false reputation? Then, there was only one reason. They wanted to conceal the existence of the world's will. The problem was why? Ling Han had come into contact with the world's will before, and he had seen the scene of the 5 Supremes sleeping. He didn't think that it was a secret. Could it be that these 5 people knew something that he wasn't? Ling Han thought for a long time. However, if this was really a secret, he obviously wouldn't be able to see through it. Moreover, it must be earth-shattering. Otherwise, why would the 5 people hide it? Since it could make a 7-step Supreme being so tight-lipped, the relationship must be huge. Under Ling Han's lead, the grandfather and grandson quickly arrived at the extraterritorial battlefield. Just like in the Frost Dimension, a great wall had been built here to neutralize the Frenzy Army's advantage in numbers. Ling Han stood in the sky and looked into the distance. He saw that the Frenzy Army was stationed 10,000 miles away from the city, densely packed together. This scale was really shocking. Who is it? A figure flew over, exuding a majestic aura. Ling Han's gaze swept over, and he couldn't help but narrow his eyes slightly, revealing a hint of killing intent. It was Xian Chihu. Yes, it's you. Xian Chihu naturally recognized Ling Han, and he also raised his gaze. Your life is really tough. You actually didn't die in the origin world of the previous generation. End of this chapter. Cell phone reading is refreshing. Chapter 3000. Me. Ling Han was slightly surprised. Why? Because I didn't know them at all. I just accidentally revealed that my surname was Ling, and that I was your grandson. As a result, they fought with me indiscriminately, Ling Fifan said. He seemed to be very curious. Old master, how many enemies did you make in the past? It seemed that he would have to think for a while before he could answer this question. Ling Han touched his chin and thought seriously for a while. Then he said, I killed most of my enemies, so they didn't leave any traces. Well, this answer was also a bit domineering. Did those people tell you their identities? Ling Han asked. No, Ling Fifan said. Then he added, I only cared about the fight, so I didn't think about asking them. This fight was really stupid, but it was really the style of the old Ling family. If they wanted to fight, they would fight, and they would not be afraid at all. Then why did you come here to ask for help? Ling Han asked. It's safer to heal here. Ling Fifan was quite strong-willed. Ling Han nodded. If you meet someone you can't defeat, don't force yourself. You can come to my place. Ling Fifan agreed. Then he sat down with his legs crossed and started to heal his wounds. He looked very miserable, but in fact, they were only flesh wounds, and he would recover in a few days. He went out again. He thought that he had suffered some losses in the previous fight, so he naturally wanted to get back at them. The old Ling family would not keep quiet after suffering losses. Ling Han didn't care. As long as Ling Fifan's life was not in danger, he would not intervene. A few days later, Ling Fifan came again with injuries, but he had a smug smile on his face. Obviously, he had injured those people more seriously. A few days later, the situation was different. Ling Fifan came back, but as soon as he entered the door, he fell to the ground and lost consciousness. A second-step celestial master could lose consciousness? How seriously was he injured? Ling Han could not help but reveal a hint of anger. If Ling Fifan had fought against the Frenzy Army, even if his limbs were broken, he would only feel heartache and not anger. However, in front of his compatriots, his own grandson had been beaten to such a state. Naturally, he was furious. He scanned Ling Fifan with his divine sense and was slightly relieved. Fortunately, although Ling Fifan's body was covered with injuries, his foundation was not hurt, and he had only fainted from exhaustion. It was hard to imagine what kind of tough battle Ling Fifan had been through to the point where he was completely exhausted. Ling Han hadn't even stood up when he noticed a group of people walking over. Their target was the stone house he was in. For the past few days, Ling Han had been in closed-door cultivation and had not seen anyone here. Therefore, these people were definitely not here for him, but for Ling Fifan, most likely because they saw Ling Fifan entering this place. Ling Fifan, hurry up and get out here. Someone shouted from outside. Ling Han frowned. So many years had passed. Why had the foreign battlefield become so chaotic? In the past, military discipline was very strict, and private fights were forbidden. Those who broke the rules would be heavily punished. What was going on now? They actually dared to openly kill their way here. Coward, weren't you very arrogant before? Why are you afraid now? If you're afraid, then get out here and kowtow 3 times. Then say that everyone with the surname Ling is a bastard 100 times. How can 100 times be enough? At least 1,000 times. Haha. The people outside couldn't help but laugh loudly. They were extremely arrogant. Ling Han scanned them with his divine sense and found that among the 24 people, only 1 was at the first step, 22 were at the second step, and 1 was at the third step. No wonder Ling Fifan would fight until he was exhausted. He was not as monstrous as Ling Han, so how could he not be exhausted like a cat playing with a mouse? Ling Han's expression was very ugly. He wanted to eliminate the frenzy, but he did not have the ambition to protect the world. Even if he did, it would only be ranked second. What he truly wanted to protect were his family and friends. Now that his grandson was being played so miserably, how could he still endure it? So what if he killed these bastards? With his current strength, what else did he have to worry about? Taking 10,000 steps back, even if he did not have the combat strength of the 7th step, didn't he still dare to flip the table with the 7th step? He stood up, opened the door, and slowly walked out. Who is this person? TSK, he looks so confident. It's so annoying. Who does he think he is? The people outside were all talking. With Ling Han's current strength and aura, if he did not take the initiative to show his prowess, apart from the 7th step, who else could see that he was extraordinary? Ling Han's gaze swept across, and these heavenly venerables gave him a sense of familiarity. He thought about it and suddenly realized that these people were the life imprints that Chong Yen, Poyu, and the others had extracted from their bodies. They were the seeds that were preserved in the previous Yuan world. Compared to Feng Wuding's outstanding performance, the others were naturally not good enough. More than 500 billion years had passed, and they had only taken 1 step, 2 steps, and 3 steps. However, Feng Wuding had received the full support of Chong Yen and the others, so his cultivation speed was naturally very fast. Moreover, he had indeed obtained some benefits from the previous Yuan world, so he definitely surpassed his peers. Are you the ones who injured my grandson? He asked calmly. That's your grandson. Those people laughed. So what? We still want to beat you up like a grandson. Fine. Ling Han nodded. These people had unreasonably started a war with Ling Fifan and bullied him with numbers. Now, they had even brought out a 3rd step cultivator to force Ling Fifan into such a state. This filled Ling Han with rage. He did not care why. Since they liked to use violence, then he would use violence to solve the problem. What's so good about it? You want to be my grandson? Someone laughed. Bang, Ling Han punched out, and that person turned into a mist of blood. 2nd step cultivator. He was just a piece of trash. Instantly, the entire place quietened down and became deathly still. A second-step cultivator had actually died just like that. Although they had forced Ling Fifan into a state of exhaustion, they still did not dare to kill him. This was because this was the foreign battlefield, and everyone needed to be united to face the enemy. Killing one's own people, no one could afford to bear such a bad reputation. However, Ling Han's attack was clean and without hesitation. He had killed that person with a single punch, as if that person was not a second-step cultivator, but an insignificant piece of trash. This was too audacious. Moreover, he had killed a second-step cultivator with a single punch. What kind of concept was that? At least the strength of a third-step cultivator. Everyone was naturally afraid. They were afraid that Ling Han would start killing again, and apart from a third-step cultivator, who else among them could match him? What's wrong? Why is there no sound now? Ling Han asked calmly. You are too audacious. You actually dared to kill someone in the camp. Or you? They mustered up their courage to ask, because that third-step cultivator was already standing in front of them, giving them courage. Chapter 3002. Yi Long was at the third step, while most of the people here were at the second step. A few of them were at the first step, so he could still hold on for now. But the problem was that while the others were unrestrained in their attacks, he was full of misgivings. He didn't even dare to injure them, let alone kill them. This naturally made him extremely passive. He had great strength, but he could only use 10 to 20% of it. Before long, he was hit a few times, causing him to stumble and blood to flow from the corner of his mouth. Unfortunately, he still didn't dare to fight back with his full strength, afraid that he would really be wronged. I didn't do it. Listen to me. He kept shouting. Unfortunately, his shouts were completely drowned out by the angry roars of the crowd. Moreover, even if someone heard him, they wouldn't care. Who would believe him? Just like that, Yi Long was continuously bombarded, and his injuries became more and more serious. Even the initiator, Ling Han, hadn't expected such a development. He'd only wanted Huang Feng to pass on a message to let the other party die in that damned place and then lure Feng Wooding over. Who would have thought that Yi Long would become the scapegoat? Yi Long felt wronged, and he also felt an indescribable regret. Why had he sided with the Wind Alliance? Although the Wind Alliance had a child of destiny and 5 7-step supremes, these people had treated him as an outsider and rejected him. They hadn't accepted him at all. He was a dignified third-step supremes, so why should he suffer such grievances? Now that he'd been treated as the murderer, he wouldn't be able to complain even if he was beaten to death. Stop! A cold shout rang out, filled with terrifying might. Immediately, half of the people stopped, while the other half slowed down their attacks. In just a few breaths' time, the situation was completely under control. A stalwart person walked over, descending step by step like a dragon or a tiger. Lord Feng. Lord Feng Qing. Many people immediately bowed. This was a fourth-step heavenly venerable, extremely monstrous. Even Feng Wooding had praised him before. Thus, even though this person wasn't from the previous origin world, everyone still gave him face. Feng Qing walked over and glanced at Yi Long with a slight frown. Lord Feng, I've been wronged. Yi Long was incomparably emotional, grabbing Feng Qing's hand. He felt as if his tears were about to fall. When had he ever been wronged? Those who could become Empyreans were all geniuses of their respective planes. Along the way, they must have crushed other geniuses in their glorious history. Therefore, Yi Long must be extremely aggrieved right now. How could he not be aggrieved? What happened? Feng Qing asked. Yi Long hurriedly recounted everything that had happened and repeatedly swore that if he told even half a lie, then he would never be able to take the fourth step. To an Empyrean, such an oath could not be any heavier. Thus, everyone began to hesitate. Could it be that what Yi Long said was true? Go and investigate, Feng Qing said. This was very easy to verify. Previously, Huang Feng's group had 24 people. Sure enough, there were many witnesses that Wasp and his party did go out together. Where did they go? Feng Qing asked again. Someone who had participated in the previous fight with Ling Fifan told her about this matter. In other words, Wasp and his party should have gone to look for Ling Fifan today, Feng Qing analyzed. But 24 people went out, and only one returned. Humph, the problem must be with Ling Fifan. Someone felt that it was unbelievable. Lord Feng, Ling Fifan is only at the second step. It's impossible for him to do that. Feng Qing shook her head. Although Ling Fifan is not a concern, his grandfather, Ling Han, had many friends in the past, many of whom were at the fourth step. You mean a fourth step powerhouse made a move? Feng Qing nodded. Let's go and see. I know the place. Someone volunteered. He had once followed Ling Fifan to Ling Han's place. However, these people did not dare to violate the rules of the campsite too much and barge into someone else's stone house to commit murder. Otherwise, they would have all died long ago. Lead the way. This time, the crowd was very angry. At least a few hundred people set out together. Although most of them were at the second step, with so many people setting out together, it could be said to be a great momentum. Wherever they went, other forces were alarmed. Why, does the Wind Alliance want to start a war? Of course, our White Alliance is not much inferior. The Tiger Alliance is fearless. It had to be said that the Wind Alliance was the strongest among all the forces. Not only did they have the most people, but their leader, Feng Wuding, was also the son of destiny and had outstanding combat strength. Moreover, Feng Wuding had 5 7-step supreme martial artists behind him. Which force could compare to them? The Lin clan was considered powerful, but they only had 3 7-step experts and 1 7-step expert. Now that the Wind Alliance looked like they were going to war, how could they not panic? Fortunately, these people from the Wind Alliance did not go to any force's territory. They just passed by and did not enter. Instead, they went to an inconspicuous corner. Where were they going? What were they doing? Many forces were curious and followed them to see what was going on. Soon, the people from the Wind Alliance arrived in front of Ling Han's stone house. Feng Qing nodded to someone and said, "Go and knock on the door." So, it was a second-step expert. He quickly answered respectfully and ran to knock on the door. The person inside, "Listen up. Hurry and come out." The second-step expert shouted. Ling Han laid down a restriction in the stone house to isolate the sound. Only then did he open the door and walk out. The moment he saw him, Feng Qing's pupils shrank into small dots. Boom, a powerful aura rippled around him uncontrollably. Feng Qing had naturally heard of Ling Han's monstrous talent. Even a 7-step supreme had been captured by him and made a prisoner. Although Golden Silkworm had escaped later on, it could not conceal Ling Han's strength. Fortunately, Ling Han had courted death himself and entered the forbidden area of the previous Yuan world. That was a place that even a 7-step expert could not enter. There had been no news of him for hundreds of billions of years, so he must have died. Thus, although Feng Qing sighed ruefully, he was still glad that this monster had finally disappeared. But now that he saw Ling Han walk out alive, how could he not be shocked to the point of panic? Was it you who killed Huang Feng? The second-step expert did not recognize Ling Han and asked loudly. Ling Han nodded and said, "That's right, I killed him." Hearing Ling Han admit it, Yi Long cried out in grief and anger. He hurriedly jumped out and pointed at Ling Han, saying, "You bastard, you've caused me so much trouble." Look, he was still covered in blood. Ling Han was shocked. Why did this guy jump out and say he was innocent? Even with his extraordinary strength, he could not have imagined that there would be such twists and turns. Ling Han did not pay attention to him and only looked at Feng Qing. After so many years, he finally saw this old bastard again. Chapter 3003. Back then, Feng Qing and Jiao Wu were high above him, looking down on him like they were gods. They could kill him if they wanted to and saw him as an ant. But now, even though Feng Qing had advanced to the 4th step, which was shockingly fast, in front of Ling Han, so what? He was no stronger than an ant. What about the others? What did you do to them? The 2nd-step cultivator was still asking. Ling Han smiled faintly and said casually, "I killed them all." Killed them all? Everyone froze at first, then they didn't believe it. What kind of joke was this? How could more than 20 celestial venerables die so quietly? Then there would definitely be a huge battle that would alert the entire camp. Who do you think you are? A venerable of the 7th step? But not everyone recognized Ling Han, especially those from the current Yuan world. The number of people who didn't recognize Ling Han could be counted on one's fingers. He was a peerless monster. Immediately, everyone started whispering among themselves. Most of them were so shocked that their scalps went numb. One should know that 500 billion years ago, Ling Han already had the strength of a venerable of the 7th step. How strong would he be now? Because Ling Han was too powerful, no one dared to make a loud noise. They basically communicated with their consciousness, in case they accidentally said something wrong and angered this guy. Just listen, Ling Han had just admitted to killing many people from the Wind Alliance. Yi Long immediately jumped up and shouted, "You madman, watch as I suppress you." Even though he was the one who was wronged, in order to raise his position in the Wind Alliance, he naturally didn't hesitate to jump out. Moreover, Ling Han was the main culprit who had wronged him. He naturally wanted to give Ling Han a good thrashing, or even kill him as soon as possible. Though the majority of the people of this era's origin world recognized Ling Han, there were also a few exceptions, and this Yi Long was precisely one of those few. Everyone looked at him and shook their heads. Was he looking to die? He actually dared to provoke that malefic star. Ling Han smiled. "You want to suppress me? Are you afraid?" Yi Long coldly said. In truth, he knew that he was not a match for Ling Han. That was because the method Ling Han used on Huang Feng was something he was unable to replicate. But isn't there a Feng Qin behind it? He was clearly no match for them, but he still jumped out. Wasn't this a display of loyalty? Ling Han nodded. All right, go ahead. However, let me say this first. I am a person who distinguishes kindness and grudges clearly. If others don't provoke me, I won't provoke them. However, if anyone provokes me, I will return the favor 100 times, 1,000 times over. Therefore you will die. What an arrogant tone. Do you think you're a 7-step supreme being? Yi Long sneered. He leapt out and attacked Ling Han. He really did go all out, operating a 7-stream symbol. In his hands, he also brandished a great banner. This was an Empyrean precious artifact, releasing terrifying power. Everyone shook their heads. This monster, Ling Han, was not just a 7-step supreme being. He had even suppressed a 7-step supreme being before. You're using an egg to smash a rock. You don't know how embarrassing your death will be. However, the people of the Wind Alliance did not recognize Ling Han. Seeing Yi Long erupt with such a powerful attack, they couldn't help but be excited. They all cheered for Yi Long. Boom, Yi Long had already charged in front of Ling Han. He had not thought of killing Ling Han. Putting aside the fact that he knew his strength was not enough, even if he had the strength, he would not do such a thing. The camp forbade killing and he had his misgivings. Thus, although this attack was vicious, it left a lot of leeway. Ling Han attacked. Peng, peng, peng. Yi Long's attacks all bounced off, appearing incomparably weak. In the midst of Yi Long's shock, he saw Ling Han's large hand reach straight in, and had already gripped his neck. He was instantly lifted up by Ling Han like a duck. He could only weakly struggle with his 4 limbs. Seeing this scene, the people of the Wind Alliance all opened their mouths wide. They had cheered for Yi Long for so long, yet this was the result. This was too embarrassing. The others were not surprised at all. Ling Han could even take down a 7-step supreme martial artist, let alone a mere 3-step supreme martial artist. Ling Han looked at Yi Long and asked, "Do you regret it or not?" Although Yi Long was shocked, thinking that there was still Feng Qin behind him, his courage was naturally boosted. He believed that Feng Qin would definitely act to save him. Thus, he said very arrogantly, "Buhui, don't be too arrogant, Tung." Before he had finished speaking, his whole person had already turned into a cloud of bloody mist. Ling Han retracted his hand indifferently. Bloody mist splattered everywhere, but not a single bit stuck to his body. Slivers of life essence surged into his body, but it was pitifully little, unable to cause even the slightest ripple. It looked like if he wanted to show him an obvious improvement, he would probably have to kill a 7-step supreme martial artist. But a seventh step undying and indestructible could not be killed at all. Thus, this path was definitely broken. Unless he could be like Frenzy and directly engulf the plane, Yilong's remnant soul danced in the air, and very soon, it would dissipate and disperse. He looked at Feng Qing, full of resentment and disbelief. Just now, Feng Qing actually did not even have the intention to act to save him. He had died too unjustly. Speaking of which, he was definitely the biggest sucker in history today. Previously, he had already been treated as a murderer and was almost beaten to death. Now, he was rushing to the front in a rush, not even knowing who his opponent was. How unjustly had he died? But no matter how unjustly he had died, so what? Very soon, he completely disappeared. Seeing a three-step supreme martial artist turn into a rain of blood, everyone was shocked. Ling Han actually dared to kill someone in the campsite. Hiss! No matter how strong Ling Han was, there was a bottom line that could not be crossed, and that was to destroy the most basic unity of the campsite. Killing people was definitely not allowed. Yet Ling Han did not take it to heart at all. With his current strength, did he still need to care about any rules? He had already said it clearly. If anyone dared to act against him, he would definitely return it 100-fold, 1,000-fold. If anyone dared to act again, they would have to bear the consequences. Feng Qing, are you going to kill yourself, or do you want me to send you on your way? Ling Han looked at Feng Qing. This was one of the people on his must-kill list. Feng Qing only felt aggrieved. Back then, this brat who was not even worth mentioning in front of him, was now in control of his life and death. He did not think that he would be able to escape with his life when his combat strength was at level 7. And if he knew that 9-5 Heavenly Lord had also been asked the same question by Ling Han, he did not know if he would empathize with Ling Han, or if he would be seething with anger. He did not make a sound, and instead looked coldly at Ling Han. At this moment, no matter what he did, it was useless. The initiative was in Ling Han's hands. Hee, Ling Han, how impressive of you! With a cold laugh, a powerful aura surged, and a young man in fluttering white robes walked out. Indefinite Wind. Chapter 3005. A Beautiful Romance. Ling Han did not stop attacking, but he did not use his full power. He wanted Feng Qing to die in despair and helplessness, so that she could take her last breath. Just how arrogant had this bastard been? This was retribution. Ling Han, stop! Xian Chihu shouted. He was the first to attack, and he joined forces with Feng Wuding to stop Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly. He increased his power slightly and blocked the two prodigies, while his other hand continued to attack Feng Qing. Seeing this scene, everyone's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. It was fine if they did not understand the battle prowess of someone at the 7th step, but anyone with eyes could easily see that Ling Han was more than capable of fighting 1 against 2. Otherwise, why would he have the leisure to attack Feng Qing? Feng Wuding and Xian Chihu roared angrily. They used their full strength, but it was useless. In front of Ling Han's peak 7th-step strength, even though it was only the late stage of 7th-step strength, the difference was still huge. Pooh, Feng Qing suffered this attack, and blood spurted from all over his body. He could only exhale, not inhale. If he suffered another attack, he would definitely die. Brother Ling, don't make a big mistake. Lin Yulian also rushed over. In her heart, Ling Han's importance far surpassed Feng Qing's. In fact, she did not even know who Feng Qing was. But it was precisely because she valued Ling Han that she could not let Ling Han make a big mistake. Otherwise, if he violated his principles, no one would be able to protect him. However, what she did not know was that Ling Han had already started a massacre long ago. Wu Haoyang also attacked. The 4 prodigies at the 7th step joined forces to fight Ling Han. Boom boom boom. The 4 prodigies joined forces and finally managed to stop Ling Han. But this was only barely enough to fight Ling Han to a draw. It was still not safe enough. Ling Han almost broke through the encirclement several times, causing their blockade to fail. Big brother, I'm sorry. White Rice cried out and joined the battle. He didn't want Ling Han to stand against everyone. After all, Ling Han wasn't in the 7th step. If he provoked all the 7-step cultivators, he would definitely die. Therefore, he must stop Ling Han from killing. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face as his battle intent finally rose. 5 of the greatest heaven's favorites of all eternity had the battle prowess of the late stage of 7th step. They were finally qualified to make him show his true strength. Come! He laughed heartily as the 7th tier runes began to revolve, instantly increasing his strength by 2,000 times. Peng, peng, peng. He clashed head-on with Xen Chihu and the other 4. Under the protection of the power of the plane, the recoil was unable to affect his body at all. His body was like 7 steps, indestructible and indestructible. Xen Chihu and the others couldn't take it anymore. They hurriedly activated their strongest heavenly venerate symbols and returned the favor to Ling Han. Suppress! Feng Wuding roared. He unleashed his plane, which formed a powerful pressure. 100 low-level planes appeared at the same time, forming a terrifying pressure. Even Xen Chihu and the others were slightly affected. Ling Han smiled. Since you've released it, don't take it back. He launched a powerful attack, waving his fists and releasing all his strength. With his current defenses, the pressure from the group of planes couldn't affect him in the slightest. He forcefully grabbed a plane and tried to snatch it. Feng Wuding was shocked and furious. If his plane was really snatched away by Ling Han, he would lose it forever. He hurriedly used his full strength to try to take back the plane. Wishful thinking, Ling Han said coldly. Terrifying power surged, and he forcefully compressed the plane until it was only the size of a palm. He grabbed it and threw it out with great force. Bang! The plane attacked Feng Qing as fast as a beam of light. Feng Qing was shocked, and his eyes widened involuntarily as fear appeared in his eyes. If this attack hit him, he would die without a doubt. He didn't want to die. After so many years of bitter cultivation, he had only used a little more than an epoch to go from the 1st step to the 4th step. His talent was truly astonishing. He had even greater hopes for himself. Perhaps he could reach the 5th step, or even the 6th step. But if he was hit by this attack, all of that would be for naught. Putting aside the fact that he was already heavily injured, even if his battle prowess was at its peak, how would he be able to dodge or parry the attack of a 7th step cultivator? He could only place his hopes on Feng Wuding and the others. But could Feng Wuding and the others stop him? They couldn't. This attack was as fast as flowing light, and Ling Han took the initiative to attack. He had all 5 powerful cultivators tied down, so they had no time to attack. Bang! The plane crushed over, and Feng Qing was directly pulverized. The plane crashed into the city wall, and the defenses that could block an attack from a 6th step cultivator were instantly destroyed. A giant hole appeared, and the plane also shattered into a dozen or so pieces, which continued to move forward. Because of the destruction, the core of the plane went berserk, and the plane started to expand. How big was the lower high-level plane? Boom! As he charged forward, it was truly as though the heavens were falling and the earth was splitting apart. Coincidentally, Madness's camp was in that direction. What was a distance of 10,000 miles? In less than a breath's time, these massive plane fragments had already arrived. Those heavenly venerable monsters were completely unprepared, and the disaster of annihilation had already arrived. With just one attack, this camp was no more, and who knew how many members of Madness' army had died or been injured? And the remaining plane fragments continued to fly forward, not entering the area controlled by Madness. What kind of damage would this cause was something that Madness had to worry about. On the Xuanma Plains side, everyone was tongue-tied, shocked by Ling Han. First, it was because Ling Han was so powerful that even the 5 7-step cultivators were unable to stop him from killing people. Second, it was because Ling Han was too audacious. As long as one was not at the 7th step, one was not truly invincible. He actually dared to kill people in the camp, and not just one at that. This time, he was in deep trouble. Who could protect him? Feng Wuding's expression was cold, and he no longer attacked. Feng Qing was already dead, and it seemed that even the 5 powerhouses working together couldn't suppress Ling Han. What was the point of fighting? He pointed at Ling Han and said, "You've already caused a great disaster. Are you going to kneel and be bound, or do you want us to do it? Ling Han smiled. I don't intend to be bound, nor will I be restrained. I still want to kill someone. He stared closely at Feng Wuding as he said that. He had endured this fellow for long enough. He was definitely going to kill him today. Feng Wuding was startled, and then he laughed heartily. Ling Han, you think too highly of yourself. You still want to kill me? If I wanted to, you'd be a dead man, said Ling Han indifferently, full of confidence. Ling Han, not only did you openly kill people in the camp, but you also destroyed the city's defenses. What kind of crime is that? Feng Wuding continued to criticize him. On the other hand, Lin Yulien and the others didn't say anything. As if to annotate his words, boundless killing intent surged over, and a large number of madness soldiers surged over. End of chapter. Chapter 3006. Everyone was shocked. The crazy army was actually killing their way over. This was too sudden. Moreover, their city walls had been destroyed, and their defensive power had been greatly reduced. Moreover, there was a new type of monster in the Frenzy army that could self-destruct at any time and unleash a destructive power at the peak of level 7. Whether it was to people or the environment, it would cause terrifying damage. In order to deal with this kind of monster, one had to discover it from a very far distance and then use a long-range attack to cause it to self-destruct. This kind of monster's destructive power was astonishing, but its defense was extremely weak. Even a 2-step or 3-step could easily kill it. Therefore, if they were discovered and destroyed in advance, then this monster would explode in the Frenzy army, causing great damage to them. The problem was that it was too difficult to discover them. Moreover, these monsters were hidden in the sea of frenzied troops. It was almost impossible to destroy them in advance. Now, the soldiers were at the gates. Meet the enemy. Lin Yulien, Xen Chihu, and the others gave the order. Feng Wuding looked at Ling Han and said sternly, Look at what you've done. Even if you're at the 7th step, you can't do as you please. He was going all out to accuse Ling Han of a crime. Otherwise, with the combat strength of a level 7 cultivator, he would naturally try his best to preserve his strength and defend against frenzy. Therefore, they had to convict Ling Han of a crime that he couldn't escape even if he made a great contribution. For example, in this current situation, if countless Empyreans died because of Ling Han, then even Lin Luo and Zhou Heng wouldn't be able to open their mouths to protect them. Otherwise, just Feng Qing's death wouldn't be enough. Ling Han smiled faintly. Of course I did. I lured the entire Frenzy army over and wiped them out. You really are Frenzy's subordinate. Feng Wuding gritted his teeth. This was a serious crime. Once it was confirmed that Ling Han was Frenzy's subordinate, all of the 7th step would do their best to kill him. Trash, barking all day long, Ling Han sneered. Fine, I'll deal with those ugly guys outside first, then I'll take your head. Xiao, he charged out. Right now, Ling Han didn't need to worry about anything. Even if the 7 steps joined hands to suppress him, he wouldn't be afraid. However, he wasn't someone who didn't have a bottom line and couldn't distinguish right from wrong. Of course they had to kill Feng Wuding, but they definitely couldn't let the entire stronghold perish with him. There was no rush. In any case, Drifting Wind couldn't run away. He was facing the Frenzy army, which was charging at him like a tsunami. Earlier, he had used the plane to kill at least 90% of the army of Delirium. However, even if only 10% remained, it was still a shocking number. They blotted out the sky and covered the earth, forming a dense black mass. Ling Han was calm and collected. He stretched out his right hand, and wang, a stream of power condensed, turning into a sphere of light that flickered with a strange light, like rippling water. Go! He casually waved a ball of light. The ball of light shot out with incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, it had already reached the deranged army. The monsters wanted to slap it with their claws, but the balls of light seemed to have grown eyes. They jumped around agilely, unable to be intercepted at all. The ball of light didn't stop until it reached the depths of the army of chaos. Explode! Ling Han said softly. Boom! Suddenly, the ball of light exploded, and a terrifying explosion of energy swept out in all directions. Bang bang bang. Wherever the energy storm passed, the deranged army was annihilated. So what if they were at the sixth step? They couldn't even withstand a single blow. Ling Han's hands kept moving as he tossed out one ball of light after another. This was the condensation of the power of all his planes, which was equivalent to the bombardment of a small origin world. Of course, its power was terrifying. The deranged army was instantly annihilated. In particular, one of the balls of light even killed an explosive monster, causing this monster to also erupt with the destructive power of a peak 7th step. The two energy storms at the peak of 7th step collided with each other, either annihilating or strengthening each other, resulting in an even more terrifying destructive effect. After Ling Han tossed out several hundred balls of light, the entire deranged army was left with less than 1,000 of them. Then Ling Han pointed out and killed one with a flick of his finger. In an instant, all of them fell from the sky. At this point, the deranged army had been completely annihilated. Not a single one of them managed to reach the top of the stronghold. For a moment, everyone was silent. They only knew how to look at Ling Han in shock. Among the heroes of the world, who else could it be but him? It was just one person, but with a wave of his hand, millions of deranged army soldiers had been annihilated. He was like a divine needle that stabilized the sea, an immovable mountain. As long as he was here, would there still be a need for walls? One person was equivalent to thousands of soldiers and horses. Unlike venerables of the 7th step, if they fought here, venerables of the 7th step would break the rules. They themselves would cause destruction to heaven and earth, which was equivalent to helping the deranged army. Thus, on this level of the battlefield, Lin Yulian, Feng Wuding, and the others with battle prowess at the 7th step were more practical than true venerables of the 7th step, even if their strength was inferior. And Ling Han was even more amazing. He had single-handedly taken care of an entire army. There really was no one else like him. Ling Han turned around and faced the people within the walls. His green robe fluttered as if he was about to leave with the wind. There was silence. No one could speak. Their divine souls had all been seized. Ling Han, you're just... Boom! Feng Wuding was just about to reprimand him when thunderous cheers erupted. Everyone seemed to have gone crazy, looking at Ling Han with fanatical gazes. At this moment, they all regarded Ling Han as a god that could save them. One person stood proudly, accepting the cheers of thousands of heavenly venerables. In comparison, whether it was Lin Yulian, Wu Haoyang, Xen Chihu, Feng Wuding, or by me, they all paled in comparison. This was like comparing a stubborn stone to a precious jade. With a single glance, one could tell who was more dazzling. At the borders, Ling Han alone was enough. When Feng Wuding saw this, he could not help but feel endless jealousy. He was the son of destiny. He was the one receiving the cheers and admiration of thousands of people should be him, not Ling Han. However, the people of the current origin world were filled with fanaticism toward Ling Han. Even those seeds from the previous generation were the same. They no longer looked at him, the Alliance Master of the Wind Alliance. He gritted his teeth in hatred, his eyes spitting fire. With such a great contribution, with such a great role, who would agree to execute Ling Han? Could it be that he would have to bear such a huge mountain for the rest of his life? Could it be that he would have to live in Ling Han's shadow forever? He wanted to kill. Ling Han pressed his hand down, and everyone's voices instantly fell silent. They all looked up at him, their eyes shining with fanaticism. It was as if they would be willing to attack Madness's headquarters for Ling Han as long as he gave the order. They were not afraid at all. This made Feng Wuding almost die of anger. He had relied on his identity as the son of destiny and the prestige of 5 7-step supremes, but he had only managed to make the seeds of the previous generation of the origin world unite around him and listen to his orders. But look at Ling Han. With just one battle, he had become the undisputed leader. End of chapter. Chapter 3007. Ling Han stared coldly at Feng Wuding. Feng Wuding naturally wouldn't back down, and he met Ling Han's gaze as well. The two men staring at each other affectionately, might cause the ignorant masses to think that there was some sort of indescribable affair going on between them. But just by looking at their killing intent, it was obvious that there was only one kind of relationship between the two, life and death enemies. Feng Wuding, I told you that you're going to die today, Ling Han said calmly. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Killing Feng Qing Yi Long Huang Feng, and so on was a huge crime, but Ling Han had displayed enough power that he had the privilege of transcending the rules. A person who could destroy Frenzy's army with a wave of his hand was too important. He wasn't someone who could be traded for with a few steps. However, Indefinite Wind was different. He was the child of destiny, and he had obtained the inheritance of the previous Yuan world. He was the key to destroying Frenzy. One could only resist Frenzy, while the other could destroy it. Who was more important? Thus, if Ling Han really wanted to kill Feng Wuding, then it would be a serious matter. Lin Youlian and the others wouldn't allow Ling Han to do that. They would do everything they could to stop him. You think you're worthy? Feng Wuding said arrogantly. Ling Han shook his head. What bullshit child of destiny? He had long since stopped believing that Feng Wuding was some child of destiny, because there was nothing special about him. That's right, 100 existential planes were indeed enough to crush any prodigy. For example, Lin Yulian and the others had only opened up 2 existential planes within their bodies, but compared to Ling Han, 100 existential planes were practically trash. Even if Feng Wuding reached 7 steps, would he be able to match Frenzy? Impossible. It was simple. Frenzy had never stopped cultivating, and it was constantly devouring planes. Its strength was constantly increasing. What made Feng Wuding think that his cultivation speed could surpass Frenzy's? Everyone else's cultivation had a limit, which was why they could surpass it. But against an existence that had no limit and was constantly improving, how could they surpass it? This was also a child of destiny. Tui, how dare you slander me? Feng Wuding said coldly. He had had enough of Ling Han. Bullshit. Let's see what the heavens will do after I kill you, said Ling Han indifferently. His figure flashed as he charged at Feng Wuding. Now it was Feng Wuding's turn. Feng Wuding naturally had no choice but to accept the challenge. He wasn't a 7-step undying body, so how could he allow Ling Han to randomly attack him? Battle. Unfortunately, once Ling Han got serious, how could Feng Wuding possibly be a match for him? He was quickly suppressed, and it was only a matter of time before he was killed. Ling Han. Xen Chihu and the other Stage 7 experts hurriedly attacked Ling Han to reduce the pressure on Feng Wuding. Ling Han harumphed and circulated his planar power, turning it into an invincible defense. He then ignored Xen Chihu and the others' attacks and focused on Feng Wuding. Xen Chihu and the others didn't know that Ling Han's defense was already at the 7th step. When they saw that he was actually letting them attack him, they couldn't help but pull back and send their attacks elsewhere. What surprised Ling Han was that while he could understand why Lin Yu Lian, White Rice, and Wu Haoyang had pulled back at the brink of death, Xen Chihu had also forcefully pulled back. That was very strange. It was too strange. However, even though the 4 of them had pulled back, some of their attacks had still landed on Ling Han's body. After all, a Stage 7 expert's attacks were too fast. How could they all be pulled back? But when these attacks landed on Ling Han's body, they didn't even injure a single hair on Ling Han's body. However, they still had some effect. After all, this was the power of a Stage 7 expert. It slightly slowed down Ling Han's charging speed, giving Feng Wuding a chance to retreat. What? Lin Yu Lian and the others were all shocked. Even if only a small part of their attacks had landed on Ling Han, a Stage 7 expert was still a Stage 7 expert. How could they take their attacks head-on? However, Ling Han acted as if nothing had happened. What the hell was going on? A Stage 7 expert's defense. Xen Chihu said word by word. Although Lin Yu Lian and the others didn't want to believe it, the facts spoke louder than words. Heavens, it was already inconceivable for a Stage 5 heavenly venerable to have a Stage 7 expert's battle prowess, but he actually had a Stage 7 physique. Was this still a Stage 5 expert? Hiss, now Ling Han really had the confidence to ignore the rules. So what if he was lawless? He was unkillable and indestructible. Who could punish him? Not only them, but the surrounding onlookers were also so shocked that their scalps went numb. How could Ling Han be so strong? Even Feng Wuding, who considered himself to be extraordinary, felt a strong chill in his heart. He was facing a true Stage 7 expert. His strength and defense had reached the peak of the world. He couldn't be killed or injured. He could only be abused by his opponent. This kind of battle was simply unfair. Ling Han only stared at Feng Wuding and said indifferently, "Who else wants to stop me?" "Brother Ling, please reconsider. Feng Wuding is the previous origin world's child of destiny. It's very likely that he's the key to eliminating madness," Lin Yulien said seriously. Of course, she still wanted to persuade him. This time, she wasn't worried about Ling Han's safety. Instead, she was worried about the big picture. Ling Han laughed. "This so-called child of destiny is only what Chong Yen and the others said. I'm full of doubts about their words. A mighty Stage 7 supremacy would actually lie. Through his own observations and the words of the world will, he was sure that Feng Wuding was definitely not a child of destiny. Chong Yen and the others were very likely hiding their little secrets. Even the Stage 7 experts had to keep their mouths shut. Their schemes might be shocking. Big brother, let's stop." White Rice also advised. Ling Han shook his head and pointed at Feng Wuding. "I said that I would definitely kill him today." Feng Wuding was enraged. Did Ling Han really think that he was a meat bun? He snorted. "Ling Han, do you think it's that easy to kill me?" "You'll naturally know after you die," Ling Han said calmly. The current Feng Wuding was no longer worthy of being called his opponent. From the very beginning, he had never taken Feng Wuding seriously. He charged out and swung his fists, furiously attacking Feng Wuding. Feng Wuding, Lin Yulien, and the others hurriedly acted. 5 Stage 7 experts once again joined forces to stop Ling Han. But could they really stop him? This time, Xan Chihu and the others naturally didn't have any misgivings. They all went all out. But after exchanging a few blows, they finally understood why the Stage 7 experts were so powerful. Undying, indestructible. Their attacks only caused sparks to fly when they landed on Ling Han's body. They couldn't injure Ling Han at all. However, they had to neutralize Ling Han's attacks. Otherwise, they would be heavily injured if they were even grazed by them. This kind of battle was too unfair. Ling Han only needed to attack and unleash his full strength, while Feng Wuding and the others could only defend. It was extremely miserable. Chapter 2, Breaking Through Theft. Chapter 3009. What a good story. Chong Yan's group of 5 was filled with disbelief. Possessing battle prowess at level 7 was already unprecedented, but at least there was still Feng Wuding who could match it. But now, Ling Han actually possessed the defense of level 7. This was terrifying. This meant that Ling Han had truly stepped into the ranks of big shots. From now on, he would be undying and indestructible. He didn't need to take anyone seriously or take them seriously. Even if the origin world was destroyed and chaos unified the world, he wouldn't die. He could live freely. At this level, what was there to be afraid of? Ah! Feng Wuding screamed. Chong Yan's group of 5 looked over. They did not care about Feng Wuding's injuries. After all, this attack had not struck his sea of consciousness, so his life would not be in danger. Thus, when they heard Feng Wuding screams, they felt some disdain. In any case, you have battle prowess at level 7. Is it proper for you to scream like this? But when they saw Feng Wuding's appearance, they could not help but be shocked. Feng Wuding's entire body was glowing as if there was a small sun inside his body. This was not something he had activated. Rather, the power of Ling Han's attack had not dissipated and was now wreaking havoc inside his body. Ah! Feng Wuding screamed again. His limbs were straight, and his mouth was wide open. Boom! Pillars of light shot out of his 7 apertures, and endless power surged out. His skin was visibly splitting open, and blood was spurting out. No! Chong Yan's group of 5 was shocked. They could sense that Feng Wuding's life essence was boiling, rushing to an inconceivable height. This was extremely abnormal. At their level, everything was within their control. Now, his life essence was boiling, even more vigorous than the 5 of them combined. This was not because Feng Wuding's strength had skyrocketed to an inconceivable level, but because his bodily functions were in great disorder. He had lost control of his body at level 7 battle prowess? There was only one possibility: Feng Wuding was about to die, which was why he had lost control. They had placed too much hope in Feng Wuding, and it was not as simple as him destroying chaos. If Feng Wuding died, their hopes would naturally be dashed. The 5 of them hurriedly pressed their palms against Feng Wuding's body in an attempt to forcibly suppress the disorder in his body. However, when they pressed their palms against Feng Wuding's body, they were shocked to discover that Feng Wuding's body was only empty and chaotic. The emptiness was because all the organs in his body had been destroyed, and the chaos was because the power in his body was boiling, wreaking havoc and surging. The 5 of them hurriedly poured their power into Feng Wuding's sea of consciousness. Then, all of them revealed despondent expressions. This was because Feng Wuding's sea of consciousness had already been destroyed, and his soul had been obliterated as well. Only a strand of it remained, and it was still putting up a last-ditch struggle. But no matter what, Feng Wuding's death was already a foregone conclusion. If he did not have such a high cultivation level and was only an immortal king, those 5 supremes could still defy the heavens and change his fate, forcefully extending his life. But now it was impossible. Empyreans were loathed by the heavens and earth. If they died, they died. There was no second chance. Save me, save me. Feng Wuding wasn't completely dead yet. There was still a remnant of his soul floating around, and it was trembling as it extended a hand toward the 5 sovereigns. It was filled with a thirst for life. Cheng Yen and the others were indifferent, and they completely ignored him. Feng Wuding was extremely important when he was alive, but if he was dead, who would care about him? Did he really think that Cheng Yen and the others treasured him so much because they loved him? Facing the incomparably cold expressions of Cheng Yen and the others, Feng Wuding was filled with despair, and there was even a kind of resentment. Why didn't you save me? He looked at Ling Han again. This person had said that he would kill him today, and it was clear that Ling Han had done it. He was filled with unwillingness. He was a supreme prodigy, so why did the heavens have to give birth to a Ling Han to compete with him? Moreover, he had even died in Ling Han's hands. If he had another chance, would he still become enemies with Ling Han? In reality, was there really an irreconcilable grudge between the 2 of them? Feng Wuding asked himself honestly, and he discovered that his grudge with Ling Han had been completely instigated by him. Moreover, Ling Han had let him off time and time again, only plundering his body. He regretted it, but this also became his final thought. Peng, his body exploded, and his remnant soul also turned to ash, disappearing. Instantly, a shocking amount of life essence surged toward Ling Han, transforming into majestic energy. Brat! Cheng Yen glared at Ling Han, his killing intent boiling. I'm not deaf, I can hear you. I can hear you, Ling Han said indifferently. His body was passively absorbing that energy, causing his cultivation to rise significantly. Feng Wuding was equivalent to a 7th-step heavenly venerable. You've ruined our hopes. Even if we crush you into pieces, it won't be able to pacify the hatred in our hearts, Skybreaker said. His black hair curled around his head, and he was infuriated to the point of insanity. Previously, his avatar had been destroyed by Ling Han, and although he was also furious, it couldn't be compared to what he was feeling now. Ling Han chuckled. Which one of you is Feng Wuding's illegitimate child? But looking at how nervous you all are, it seems like all of you are his biological father. You're courting death. Heavenly Venerable Skybreaker roared angrily, and took the initiative to attack. Boom, he unleashed a boundless power that blasted toward Ling Han. Ling Han let out a long howl, and didn't show any weakness as he began to clash with Heavenly Venerable Skybreaker. Space continuously exploded. The collision of peak 7-step Heavenly Venerables had incomparably terrifying destructive power. Xiao, 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 several more figures rushed over. They were naturally Lin Luo, Zhou Heng, and the other 7-step supremes. When they saw that Ling Han was currently engaged in a fierce battle with Skybreaker, Their eyes all widened slightly. Ling Han could actually match the battle prowess of a peak 7-step heavenly venerable? This was too inconceivable. This brat clearly hadn't advanced to the 7th step, so how could his physique be so powerful that he could forcibly contend against a 7th-step heavenly venerable? A giant? Another giant had appeared among them. He was undying and indestructible, and could exist for eternity. No existence could kill him, and it was impossible for him to even commit suicide. Meanwhile, Golden Silkworm's expression was strange. Its mouth was half open, and its heart was filled with complicated feelings. He had been suppressed by Ling Han, and this was a humiliation that could never be washed away. But now, his battle prowess was only at the middle stage of the 7th step, while Ling Han was at the peak stage of the 7th step. The only thing that he was proud of, his physique, had also been caught up by Ling Han. Was there still a chance for revenge? A 7th-step heavenly venerable should have been able to look down on the world and be omnipotent. This kind of helplessness made him extremely speechless. Boom! Just at this moment, an even more powerful aura appeared. It far surpassed any 7th-step heavenly venerable, and even all 7 steps added together couldn't compare. Frenzy had appeared. There was no one to restrain it, so it naturally had to seize the opportunity to push its way over. Shwa! It flung out a tentacle that whipped toward the crowd. This was practically a super high-level existential plane swatting over. No, it wasn't just one, but several. The end of this chapter. Chapter 30:10. Lin Luo and the others hurriedly parried the attack. 8-8 studies. At the same time, Xen Chihu and the other 6 steps started to run. They didn't even have the courage to block one move. It wasn't that they lacked courage. Rather, if they were to take this attack head-on, they would undoubtedly die. Frenzy's strength had already surpassed the peak of the 7th step. It could even be considered the 8th step. Without an indestructible body, if one tried to fight against it head-on, one would definitely die. Empyrean Sundermount acted as if he hadn't seen it. He continued to stare at Ling Han as he madly attacked. He knew that he could not kill Ling Han, but his boundless hope was suddenly shattered. How could he suppress the anger in his heart? In any case, he had an indestructible body, so what if he was willful? Moreover, since hope had been extinguished, how could he have the mood to fight against madness? Who cares if your Yuan world collapses or not? What does that have to do with me? Bam! When Frenzy's attack fell, all the 7 steps were sent flying. No one could take him head-on. After devouring the Frostfire plane, Frenzy's strength had reached a level where he could crush all the 7 steps. Pooh! Ling Han couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He couldn't help but be overwhelmed with shock. The defensive layer that he had cultivated could withstand hundreds of attacks from 7 steps, but it had already been shattered by this frenzied attack. The strength of Frenzy was unimaginable. Poyu's gaze swept over. He couldn't help but reveal a cold smile. So, you aren't truly undying and indestructible. He had also taken a blow from Frenzy, but he was only sent flying. He was not injured at all. But Ling Han? His face turned pale, and he even vomited blood. This was definitely not a true undying body. I understand now. It's just that your defensive power is extremely strong. As long as you don't break through the limits of this layer, you'll be able to replenish it endlessly. However, as long as your strength is overwhelming, this layer of defense won't be able to withstand a single blow. Heavenly Lord Sunderpeak said. His words were basically spot on. As expected of a 7th step supreme being. Since you don't have an undying body, then you can die. Empyrean Sundermount slaughtered his way over again. His hands hacked out, condensing 6 types of intrinsic powers, turning them into unstoppable sharp blades. Ling Han snorted and waved his fist angrily. Boom! The two of them clashed, creating a powerful shockwave, but neither of them was injured at all. Ling Han had already set up his defenses again. Such a collision was nothing to him. Heavenly Venerate Sundermount's eyes narrowed. Although he had seen through the weakness of Ling Han's defense, seeing through it was one thing. Whether or not he could break it was another matter. To be honest, he couldn't break it. but Frenzy could. He immediately had an idea. When Frenzy struck again, he would entangle Ling Han, not giving him a chance to escape. Heavenly Venerate Sunder Mountain was naturally sent flying by the crushing force. However, not only was Ling Han sent flying, but he was also vomiting blood. He was in a miserable state. Brat, I'll take your little life. Empyrean Sundermount charged back, his 6 essential energies transforming into a spear that stabbed viciously at Ling Han. Ling Han frowned. He wasn't afraid of Sundermount, but Frenzy's power was far too strong. It had reached the point where it could break through his defenses. Thus, if they fought here, he would be at too much of a disadvantage. He very much wanted to kill Chong Yen and the others, but his physique hadn't truly reached the indestructible tier yet. Even if it was, he wouldn't be able to suppress Chong Yen and the others. Thus, there was no point in continuing to fight. Time to go. At the present stage, he was still focused on increasing his cultivation. As long as he took 6 steps, he would definitely be able to hang on Sundermount and the others. And if he took 7 steps, even if his power wasn't enough to kill them, it would be more than enough to suppress them. Once he made up his mind, he didn't hesitate to turn and leave. Shwa. But Frenzy clearly had plans to kill him here. A long feeler flew over, carrying with it an incomparably terrifying power. Ling Han scurried away, but Sundermount charged out from the side, waving his spear and stabbing at Ling Han. This couldn't hurt him, but it was enough to stop him, allowing Frenzy to swing his true butcher's knife. Fuck, how despicable! Ling Han said in his heart. Sundermount and Frenzy had actually joined forces to harm him. They were really shameless to the extreme. Shwa. A figure appeared, blocking in front of Ling Han. Then, he moved to meet Frenzy's attack. Lin Luo. There was no suspense. Lin Luo was completely unable to block this attack, and he was immediately sent flying. However, after being blocked, the power of this attack was sharply reduced. When it hit Ling Han's body again, its power had already been reduced by a few hundred times. Ling Han was sent flying, but this time, he was completely unharmed. No one else knew. Only Ling Han himself knew that the defensive layer on his body had been weakened by nearly 90%. In other words, even if the power of Frenzy had been reduced by a few hundred times, it still had the ability to threaten him. Senior Lin, Senior Zhou, Senior Chu, I'll take my leave first, Ling Han said. He didn't slow down at all, flying away like lightning. If he stayed here, he would be in great danger. Hand over your life. Heavenly Venerable Sundermount hurriedly chased after him, but he was once again blocked by Lin Luo. Chong Yen and the other 3 also chased after him. Bai Fan, Xen Fu, and Heavenly Venerable Blood Rainbow joined forces to block the 4 Supremes. All of them were undying and indestructible, so they had no qualms about attacking. Myriad Shadows, Golden Silkworm. Putting aside the fact that there was still Zhou Heng and Chu how to hold him back, even if there weren't any, would they dare to make a move against Ling Han? This was especially so for Golden Silkworm. The shadow in its heart was as large as a mountain. Myriad Shadow's first reaction upon seeing Ling Han was to turn and run. With this block, Ling Han naturally flew away as if he was flying. Shwa. But the most terrifying thing was still Frenzy. A tentacle waved over, and it was more terrifying than anything else. Ling Han didn't take it head-on. He released all his power, allowing him to activate his extreme speed. He ran in front, and behind him, a long tentacle chased after him. It seemed as though there was no limit to it, and it could stretch endlessly until it reached him. The distance between the 2 sides was gradually decreasing. Whether it was in the void or the plane, Frenzy's speed and power were unparalleled in the world. Ling Han's expression didn't change in the slightest. His expression was solemn as he continued to run. In front of him, the passageway to the extraterritorial battlefield had already appeared. As long as he entered that passageway, he would be in the territory of the Xuanma Plain. It would greatly suppress Frenzy and greatly weaken its power. At that time, it wouldn't be difficult for him to receive another attack from Frenzy. When he was less than 10 miles away from that passageway, Frenzy's attack arrived. The tentacles slightly surpassed him, and then fiercely attacked behind him. This attack not only had terrifying power, but it also wanted to send Ling Han into the extraterritorial battlefield. Clearly, Frenzy also knew that if Ling Han escaped into the Xuanma plane, it wouldn't be able to kill this young man. Ling Han didn't enter the void. That was Frenzy's main battlefield. Before he could tear open the void again and return, he would definitely be entangled by Frenzy until he died. He roared, and his figure hurriedly scurried up. Chapter 30:11. A Beautiful Romance. Ling Han leapt high into the air, and the power of the plane in his body was completely released in an instant, transforming into an even sturdier layer of defense. Even if he had made the most correct response in time, he was still swept by Frenzy's tentacles, causing his figure to immediately slanted and fly out to the side. Fortunately, he had crashed into the exit of the extraterritorial battlefield. Ling Han gritted his teeth. Just this one attack had caused cracks to appear on his hundreds of thousands of low-level high-level planes, and they had suffered extremely serious damage. They needed to be repaired immediately, or else they might all collapse. Although he could already endlessly multiply the planes now, how long would it take to nurture so many low-level high-level planes? The previous origin world had already completely disappeared, so how could there still be so much energy for him to absorb? Shua, Frenzy attacked again, and attacked towards Ling Han. However, this time, Ling Han exploded with power again. Ping, blazing light surged out of his body, and he flew out of the extraterritorial battlefield in a staggering manner. Frenzy's tentacles flew out, but they were strongly suppressed by the Xian Mo plane, and their power instantly decreased explosively. Pung 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 pung. There were still Lin Yu Lian and the other 3 great elites at the exit, and they all attacked Frenzy. Originally, they were not Frenzy's match at all, but with the help of the Xian Mo plane, the majority of Frenzy's power was suppressed, and only then did they manage to resolve this attack. However, the figures of the 4 great elites were also sent flying, all of them pale, and their bodies trembled. Quang, furious thunder sounded between heaven and earth, and there was an indescribable power surging. This was the world will of the Xian Mo plane. If Frenzy was only an elite, then the world will would only suppress him, and would not be able to directly target him. However, Frenzy was still a plane, and this was different. Planes faced planes, and the Xian Mo plane could also wield the greatest power. Frenzy did not attack again. His tentacles waved lightly, and then he retreated. Xiao, he instantly disappeared. Ling Han struggled to get up. At this time, the world will of the Xuanma plane was also starting to dissipate. It almost didn't have any sense of existence. It could only be manifested when it was being bullied by madness. Ling Han possessed the unique power of this plane. Now, it had evolved into a lower-level plane. This was inherited from the same source. Therefore, he had obtained a trace of the will of heaven and earth. He wondered, why was the power of the plane only activated when there was a life or death threat? Otherwise, with how much the plane loathed Empyreans, as long as it interfered a little, which Empyrean would be able to achieve the Tao? In the unseen world, there seemed to be something that transcended the rules suppressing the plane, forcing it to act according to some kind of rule. There are rules above rules. Ling Han couldn't help but sink into deep thought. Then what kind of power ensured that the plane operated in such a way? If such a power really existed, wouldn't it be even more powerful? Chong Yen and the other supreme martial artists were already at the peak of the 7th step, and their strength could no longer advance any further. Logically speaking, they should have no more desires, yet they were still so anxious and restless. Why exactly? Don't say that it was just to destroy Frenzy. He didn't believe it. Moreover, Chong Yen and the other supreme martial artists were deliberately hiding it. They must be plotting something, hiding a big secret. What was it? Lin Yu Lian, Xen Chihu, and the other 2 supreme martial artists also stood up and flew back to their original positions. Their injuries weren't serious, and they were much better off than Ling Han. The 4 great prodigies all looked at Ling Han, their eyes filled with admiration as well as wariness. Who asked Ling Han to kill Feng Wuding. If he could kill Feng Wuding, he could naturally kill them. The four prodigies couldn't help but be wary. Ling Han looked at Xen Chi Hu and said indifferently, "Little Hu, do you dare to attack?" He was covered in injuries, and his essence, energy, and spirit were very weak. However, his fighting spirit was unwavering. Xen Chi Hu snorted and waved his hand. "After your injuries are healed, I will consider playing with you. As for now, I can't be bothered to bully an injured person." Fuck, when did this guy become so open and aboveboard? Ling Han was surprised that Xen Chi Hu would say such a thing. Previously, Hu had shamelessly forced him to carry out the decapitation plan. Hu had purposely splashed dirty water on him and forced him to his death. Xen Chi Hu's actions were indeed a bit contradictory. Previously, when Ling Han had wanted to kill Feng Wuding, the four prodigies had blocked him together, and Ling Han hadn't put up any defenses. The four prodigies had all withdrawn their strength, afraid that they would accidentally injure or even kill him. Logically speaking, Xen Chi Hu shouldn't have been so polite. At this moment, a terrifying aura surged, and a person walked out from the entrance of the extraterritorial battlefield. Sunder Mountain. He immediately stared at Ling Han, and the corner of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. Very good, this brat was heavily injured. As long as he attacked with his full strength, this brat would have no time to recover. After a long battle, this brat would definitely be exhausted, unable to maintain his defenses, and die at his hands. "Brat, you're dead." Piyu attacked, charging towards Ling Han. "Milord, please show mercy." Lin Yu Lien, Wu Haoyang, and by me all moved to block Piyu's attack. To Ling Han's surprise, Xen Chi Hu also moved. Boom. The four prodigies weren't Sunder Mountain's match. With just one move, they were all sent flying. There was a huge gap between a late-stage 7-step and a peak 7-step 7-step. In terms of physique, the four prodigies were even weaker. One attack caused their blood to boil, and it was incomparably uncomfortable. But Sunder Mountain wasn't worried at all. His physique wasn't bad, and he was only stopped for a moment by the power of the 7th step. He immediately attacked again. Ling Han attacked, clashing with Sunder Mountain. A near-invincible defense spread out. As long as it didn't touch Frenzy, no one could break through it, not even a peak 7th step. However, Ling Han had been severely wounded by Frenzy's several attacks, and the planes inside his body had all suffered heavy damage. In the first place, they were in great need of recovery, and under such a fierce battle, the cracks on each plane were becoming deeper and deeper, and were about to shatter into pieces. This couldn't go on. Shio. At this moment, even more elites appeared. Chong Yen, Big Dipper, Xin Yu, and Half Moon, the four paragons, all stared coldly at Ling Han, as if they were looking at a dead man. With Feng Wuding dead, they went crazy, and didn't even care about Frenzy anymore. As Ling Han fought, he was still wondering what use Feng Wuding had, and why Chong Yen and the others were so nervous. In terms of killing Frenzy, his battle prowess was stronger than Feng Wuding's, so shouldn't he be more valuable? Xiao, Lin Luo and the others also appeared. If Chong Yen and the others treasured Feng Wuding, then Lin Luo and the others valued Ling Han immensely. He might be the only candidate to deal with Frenzy. "Let's go," Lin Luo said to Ling Han. Right now, Ling Han was the fuse. As long as he was around, Chong Yen and the others wouldn't give up. Ling Han nodded. He also urgently needed to recuperate. Chapter 3013. On the surface of the lake, the white-clothed woman and her servant could only hold onto the edge of the boat to stabilize themselves. Otherwise, they would definitely be thrown into the water. It was as if they were experiencing a tsunami. There was nothing else in their minds except for the thought of not falling into the lake. After a long time, perhaps an era, or perhaps just an instant, the lake suddenly calmed down. "You scared me to death." The green-clothed woman patted her chest with all her might. She was not at all worried that she would use too much force and flatten the towering peaks. She looked towards the white-clothed woman. "Miss, are you all right?" The white-clothed woman shook her head. Although she had experienced a storm, her expression was still calm. She looked at the lake. Ever since she was young, she would go on a boat for a while every day. Suddenly, she felt a sense of unfamiliarity. Huh. She suddenly froze and pointed at a certain spot on the lake. Shani, look, is there a person there? Miss, your eyes must be playing tricks on you. How could there be someone here? The green-clothed woman shook her head. She was quite broad-minded and grinned. Other than you, the demons in Heavenly Treasure Lake will not allow outsiders to enter. Once discovered, they will immediately tear you to pieces. A few hundred years ago, Seventh Elder's son wanted to enter the lake without permission to obtain some treasures. In the end, he was torn to pieces. Seventh Elder wanted to start a war, but wasn't he suppressed by Lord Sect Master? Recklessly trespassing into Heavenly Treasure Lake will only result in death. The white-clothed woman naturally knew this. She pointed at the spot just now. Look carefully. The green-clothed woman finally looked again. This time, she was greatly shocked and directly fell off the boat. Fortunately, the white-clothed woman reached out in time and caught her. What did she see? A man. A ghost. Her face was filled with shock. What was going on? There was actually someone in the lake, and his eyes were wide open. If he wasn't a ghost, what was he? One had to know that anyone who entered the lake would only be torn to pieces. The only exception was the young lady beside her. However, the two women immediately saw densely packed creatures appear in the depths of the lake. There were fish spirits, shrimp spirits, crab spirits, and so on. It was likely that all the water demons in Heavenly Treasure Lake had been mobilized. I'll go save him, said the white-robed woman. Before the azure-robed woman could stop her, she had already jumped into the lake and swam towards that man. She knew that she would not be hurt by the monsters in the lake, but that man was different. He seemed to have angered the entire Heavenly Treasure Lake, causing so many demon spirits to move out. Even she felt a little uneasy. Miss. The azure-clothed woman only had time to call out. She almost wanted to jump into the lake, but she knew that only her miss could swim in the lake. If she jumped into the lake, she would definitely die. So, she could only wait on the boat, hoping that young miss could return safely as usual. However, this time, she was not confident because there were too many demon spirits in the water. Just looking at them made her heart go numb. Ling Han was surprised. He naturally saw the two women on the lake, but with his current height, did he need to care? He didn't use any of his power. He just moved with the waves. As for the water demons below him, it was simple. He was the key for them to gain intelligence and walk on the path of cultivation. Which one of them didn't respect him like a god? Now that he was about to leave, these water demons naturally had to send him on his way. However, Ling Han's aura was too terrifying. Not a single water demon could make a sound. They could only silently send him off. This woman actually wanted to save him? Ling Han's heart trembled slightly. This woman was truly kind and brave. Otherwise, when they saw such a dense army of water demons, they would immediately flee, let alone risk their lives to save someone. Seeing the white-robed woman approach, the water demons all revealed hostility. They were naturally close to this woman, which was why they had played with her in the lake since they were young. They viewed her as a companion, but when it came to Ling Han, things were completely different. This was their ancestor, their origin, and their totem. How could they allow anyone to blaspheme him? The white-robed woman couldn't help but be shocked. She naturally saw the killing intent of these water demons. She was innately sensitive to such auras, and her first reaction was to turn and run. But when she glanced at Ling Han, she gritted her teeth and continued diving down. She grabbed one of Ling Han's arms, and then desperately swam up to the surface of the lake. All the water demons wanted to make a move, but Ling Han released a powerful aura, causing them to not dare to move at all. Whoosh! The white-robed woman floated up to the surface of the water. She leaped up and landed on the boat. Miss, you scared me to death. The azure-robed woman patted her chest as hard as she could. This was truly worrying. If she continued to trample on the water like this bulge would sooner or later become a depression. The white-robed woman looked at the surface of the lake, and saw that the water demons had all stopped 300 feet below the water. They didn't come up again, but they didn't disperse either. They were all staring at her. This caused her heart to tremble. She had never seen these water demons react in such a way. "Let's go," she said. "Okay." The azure-robed woman hurriedly responded, then urged the boat to leave. Only now did the white-robed woman look at Ling Han. When she leapt onto the boat, she had also thrown Ling Han down. When she saw him, she almost stumbled. Because Ling Han's expression was as if nothing had happened, and he even had a faint smile on his face. "Did you know that you almost died just now?" She humphed and said, "You're not a disciple of our sect?" "I'm not." Ling Han shook his head. He had only used his divine sense to sweep out, but it had already enveloped the entire Clear Sky sect. Everyone's every movement, every word, and every action seemed to be right in front of his eyes. In that instant, he already knew what was going on. "How dare you? Not only did you barge into our sect, you even coveted our sect's sacred lake." The white-robed woman reprimanded. Ling Han smiled. "Then why did you still save me? My miss has the heart of a Buddha. She can't even bear to trample an ant to death. Otherwise, if it were someone else, you would have long since been torn to shreds by those water demons and eaten as food," the azure-robed woman interrupted. Ling Han made an "oh" sound and said, "Then I can jump back into the lake to return the favor." "You're crazy," the white-robed woman exclaimed. She immediately calmed down. "When you reach the shore, leave immediately, and don't ever come back again. Otherwise, you won't have such good luck again." What a good heart, Ling Han thought to himself. It was like a thief who had entered a house, and although he did not steal anything, he was instead caught in a beast trap. Not only did she not inform the authorities to arrest the thief, but she also helped the thief escape and send him away. In this world, there shouldn't be many kind people like her. She should be one of a kind. Ling Han tilted his head and revealed a listening expression. After a while, he said, "Then I owe you a favor. If you need my help, come find me, and I will naturally help you solve it." Chapter 30:14. Hearing Ling Han say this, the green-clothed woman immediately revealed a look of disdain. "Brat, who do you think you are? Even your life was saved by my miss, and you actually said that you can solve the problem for my miss? You're really boasting shamelessly." Ling Han only smiled, did not explain, and did not display any earth-shattering strength. At his level, many things could only depend on fate. If the white-clothed woman believed him, then he would naturally help. If she did not, then Ling Han would not forcefully interfere. The white-clothed woman also felt that Ling Han was a bit of a fraud. After the boat docked, she said, "You're on your own." She withdrew the boat and left with the green-clothed woman. After the servant took a few steps, she turned back and stuck out her tongue at Ling Han. Ling Han naturally did not take it to heart. He walked slowly, comprehending the mountains and rivers. He was puzzled. Since the plane had its own intelligence, why couldn't it do as it pleased? What power was restraining them? Ling Han sensed the mountains and rivers, hoping that he could comprehend something from them. No matter how big the world was, it was still made up of countless mountains and rivers. Through small things, it might not be impossible to see the true meaning of the world. Ling Han was walking in the territory of the Clear Sky sect. Naturally, many people saw him, but when they saw his calm and unperturbed appearance, although he was extremely unfamiliar, they thought that he was a disciple that an elder had just taken in, which was why they did not recognize him. Not a single person actually thought that he was an intruder. On the other hand, the white-clothed woman returned to her room. In just a short while, a servant came over. "Miss, master invites you over," the servant said. The white-clothed woman nodded and followed the servant. Soon, they arrived at a large hall. "Greetings, father." She bowed. "Rise." The white-clothed woman stood up, and her beautiful eyes swept around. She saw that other than her father Ning Daolon, there were two other people in the hall. One looked to be about 40 years old, and had a tall and sturdy figure. However, powerhouses could not be judged by their appearance. Perhaps it was not strange that he was older than Ning Daolon by a few 100 million years. The last person was a young man. He was very handsome, but his gaze was somewhat evil, which made her dislike him. "Hi Xan, This is Senior Han Zhang. Ning Daolan pointed at the burly middle-aged man. The white-clothed woman, Ning Haixin, bowed to the middle-aged man. Greetings, Senior Han. Ha, I've long heard that fellow Taoist Ning's beloved daughter is so beautiful. It seems it really is so. Han Zhang laughed as he spoke. This made Ning Haixin a little unhappy. Although it was a compliment, it made her very uncomfortable. One could only say that this Han Zhang was a boorish person. This is Brother Lu Yang. Ning Daolan pointed at the young man. Brother Lu is the fourth son of immortal King Anting. He's an outstanding genius, and his future accomplishments might not be inferior to Lord Anting. Ning Haixin bowed to Lu Yang. Greetings, Brother Lu. Sister, please get up. A strange light flashed across Lu Yang's eyes. He hurriedly stood up and dashed over to help Ning Haixin up. Ning Haixin took a step back, causing Lu Yang's support to miss. A trace of disgust flashed through her heart. This person was too brazen. He actually reached out to take advantage of her. It seems that nephew Lu is very fond of your daughter. Han Zhang laughed. Brother Ning, when do you think the wedding date should be set? What? Ning Haixin was shocked. She was going to marry this Lu Yang, who was obviously not a good person. She looked at her father, hoping that Ning Daolan would immediately reject it. However, to her disappointment, Ning Daolan was actually seriously considering it. That wasn't a rejection, but a wedding date. For a moment, she felt dizzy and almost fainted. What her father said next, she did not hear clearly at all. Her mind was in a mess. She only heard the last sentence, 3 months later, I await Lu Yang's coming to fetch the bride. She did not know how she returned to her room. It was as if she had lost her soul. Miss, what's wrong? The green-clothed woman hurriedly came over. Ning Haixin was dazed. With the support of the green-clothed woman, she returned to her room. She sat by the bed, and suddenly began to cry. Miss, what's wrong? Don't scare me. The green-clothed woman was at a loss. Why was she crying all of a sudden? Ning Haixin did not respond, and only sobbed. She was filled with grievances. She was going to marry, and she was actually only informed when the wedding date was set. Furthermore, Lu Yang was not a good person. She was born to be able to tell whether a person was good or evil. Whether they had evil intentions or not, she could tell with a single glance. On Lu Yang, she only saw disdain and contempt. Marrying this kind of man, she would definitely spend the rest of her life in misery. She might even die of depression. Why did her father betroth her to this kind of man? She calmed down. The answer should be very simple. Celestial King Anteng. Lu Yang's father was a celestial king, and Ning Daolan had great ambitions. She was not content with the ascending origin tier. She was strong, but she would one day transform into Dao. But becoming a celestial king would be different. She would be immortal, and live as long as heaven and earth. Ning Daolan needed to use her daughter as a bridge to give herself a chance to become a celestial king, even if this hope was incredibly small. But shouldn't all parents in this world dote on their children? Ning Haixin knew that her father would be so cruel because she still had 2 older brothers, who were enough to support the future of the Ning clan. As for his daughter, she would have to marry eventually. Wouldn't it be better if she could earn some benefits for herself while she was at it? Ever since she was young, Ning Haixin knew that her father did not dote on her much. He only cared about 2 things. The first was her own cultivation level, and the second was the growth of her 2 sons. She stopped sobbing because she knew that her father's decision could not be changed. She raised her head and said with incredible determination, Xian Yi, I want to leave this place. But the green-clothed woman was still completely unclear of the situation. Father wants to force me to marry a complete stranger, and that person is a bad person, Ning Haixin said. The green-clothed woman only hesitated slightly, and then said, All right, miss, let's go. The 2 women packed up. They naturally had a spatial god tool to store their belongings, so no one would be able to tell no matter how many things they brought. They walked out of the room, and walked down the mountain. Their footsteps were calm, not wanting to be seen through by others. Miss, look. The green-clothed woman suddenly pointed at the mountain path in front of them. Ning Haixin looked over and could not help but be surprised. Wasn't this the man she had saved from the heavenly treasure lake? Didn't she tell him to leave? Why did he look so relaxed, as if nothing had happened? Did he really think that this was his home? She wanted to walk over and lecture him, but when she thought of her own situation, she sighed and pretended not to see. The two women arrived at the foot of the mountain, but before they could walk out of the blue sky sex gate, they heard a faint voice say, "Miss, please go back. Reading on your phone is more refreshing that you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.